All right, good morning. How is everybody?
Good morning.
Good morning. Are y'all ready to get started today? Yeah. All right.
Let's do it.
Where's Denise?
She's here because I saw her.
While everybody's going to still mingling, one of the things I like to do is, we talked about a lot of things yesterday. Hopefully you had some aha moments, or you learned maybe something, one or two things new. And we typically can think about those and reflect on those, on the ride home or in the evening or on the way in. So I would love to hear from you all. What was one takeaway that kind of stuck in your mind for the next day?
For me, it was, I know sometimes we don't like to get in the weeds, and we got in the weeds a little bit yesterday, but interpretation of words. We can all see the same word and have a totally different interpretation of it. And yesterday's opportunity to pause and get context and history from folks in this room just continues to the fog dissipates for me. Like, some of the clarity comes when I can hear how we got to a place or why something is worded a certain way. And that's going to actually help advance us and move us forward. So it feels a little messy, and it feels tedious sometimes, but it's greatly beneficial.
Yeah, it's the context,
Yeah.
right? The context that gets the clarity. So awesome, thank you.
I guess my biggest takeaway yesterday was seeing everyone's triggers and learning to be, learning to be sensitive to that, understanding. Okay, well, if I say this may trigger this. So to stay out of that, just respecting where everyone is coming from, and when we speak in that language.
Yes. And so the pages for that and how just remind, well, I think you guys already got into the app a little bit, but there's even the tips on communicating with each other in different types, and so definitely use that as a resource. And that will significantly improve.
I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for us to begin to know the superintendent better. This is going to be a long-term relationship, and I thought hearing from you yesterday helped us, see that, first of all, you don't mind saying something isn't clear. That's helpful. If people will say that, I don't really understand this, what do you mean by this, those kinds of things. So I thought it was a very big help in terms of cementing our relationships.
Great.
Great.
I now understand why sometimes I leave board meetings very frustrated.
Yeah.
Just because, I'm being very, very green. It was one of those things where seeing kind of where everybody was on the spectrum, it was very much of a, I come from things, I already knew I came from things from a very different point of view, but now I understand a little more why, where everybody was landing on the triangle.
Right. Yeah, and those are all strengths to leverage, right? So leveraging the red, the green, the blue. So if y'all start going really, really blue and you're skipping over the green, right? Go back to the green and it's that whole blended motive that you see. Same thing with red. If you're moving really, really fast, but you're going, wait, what are we moving fast for? We don't really have the detail or the plan, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you can start to really marry those things. So thank you.
I'll say one of mine, and I was looking at the beautiful capture that Inky Brittany did for us yesterday. Oh, she's not here today.
She's being here by number.
Oh, okay. And it was amazing to me how some of the points one of the points that really resonated that I appreciated from the superintendent was when we were reviewing the communications protocol, and she changed it from a kind of the one direction that it was to more of a collaborative document. I really, really appreciated that shift. And that was one of the things that Brittany captured up there, which I just found really interesting, because that was kind of a big takeaway, you know, changing it from me to we is a huge
That's super
incentive.
Yeah.
Well, it helps us to be more appreciative of everybody's personalities. So now when we have board meetings, it's, you can kind of sit there and say, well, she's acting like that because that's the way she thinks, and he's acting like that, or even myself. So it helps you to have a better understanding of different personalities, and it will have a stronger bond, I think. And meetings can go, you know, they already go effectively, they can actually go much more effectively understanding when someone is quiet, when someone is, you know, grabs the mic real fast, or when someone is always throwing everything down, and you're like, you vote like that, you know, you don't see, so that gives you a better insight.
Good, good. Y'all learn anything?
I'd be interested in hearing from cabinet. Yesterday, they were rather silent in the room, which at times also made me uncomfortable. Because I don't, yeah, I like for there to be like everybody engaged and participating, and we explicitly asked them not to, so it was like a mind thing I focused on yesterday, like, why are they not participating? So we might change that in the future, but any takeaways from the team as you sat and listened? Did anything resonate with you yesterday? Any clarity or lack of?
Well, I could certainly say I know what to say and not to say now at the board. I know those triggers.
You got a trigger list?
So I did say, so when I have to stand there and ask questions, I'm gonna have a color wheel. Look, oh, that's a red person asking a question.
There you
It's a
go.
green person.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, just that part was very interesting, and it was interesting to think about something similar was done with schools, and to look and hear the characteristics from board members and how they match up with the leaders in their districts in terms of school leaders. That was interesting.
Good, interesting.
I'm starting to see more synergy among the group, and I think that's really important. If we're going to do the great work we've been called to do, it's important that you have synergy and find common ground. And I see that there seems to be a lot better communication and understanding how and respect for different opinions. So I think that's going to go a long way.
Dr. Watts, I wonder if you invited board members to come to your cabinet retreat and asked us to just sit and be quiet. You know, and listen like they did yesterday. I wonder how.
That would work.
Well, yeah, I wonder how that would work.
Probably a less frank discussion.
Yeah. And that's something. Would that change the dynamics of the cabinet retreat if we board members were there?
Look at all of them. They're also thinking if we all show up, then the media gets to show up.
Exactly.
That's interesting, yeah.
Three of y'all can
Yes.
Small groups.
But aspirationally, that would be the ideal state, right? In an aspirational way, that would be the ideal state. Is that? And I heard that from you all several times yesterday too. That you wanted to see. It's the whole team, which is cabinet. It's inclusive of cabinet, because we can't have governance without execution, and so you can't have one side of the pie without the other side of the pie. So in order to get the whole sweet potato pie, you got to have the whole team. So the aspirational state would be that we could function with synergy and collaboration. So.
Awesome. Anyone else? Takeaways from yesterday. All right. What we're going to do now is we wanted to kind of touch on the identity piece again, where we had talked a little bit about brand yesterday, and Dr. Watts gave you all a homework assignment. So we're going to debrief that in a minute. But Dr. Watts and I talked last night, and we both are familiar and big fans of Simon Sinek, Start With Why. I'm sure that most of you have heard of it. I don't know if you have seen the video. I've played this video 100 times and I still learn something every time, but he really kind of gets to the core of getting into why we do what we do. So we're gonna play that video, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Watts, and then we're gonna capture your homework assignment, and then we will move into the strategic plan and continue going from there. So I think this video is probably about 15 minutes.
We assume you know why we do what we do. And how do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access, the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight? The Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operated it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way. And it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it.
Campworks builds adventure trailers. Our Dell-powered server is an incredible asset. It means that we really aren't limited. All we have to do is reach the potential we set for ourselves.
Oh my God.
And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers, the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You ready to buy a computer from me? All I did was reverse the order of the information. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain, looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and the figures, and say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't the other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to go to you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, you know, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the dot-com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions, was the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers team had a college education. not even Orwell or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orwell and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys, now we'll improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first, he didn't get rich, he didn't get famous, he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. You'll sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10%, proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We will have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it. So it's this here, this little gap that you have to close. Jeffrey Moore calls it crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure, a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo's a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you, we don't need it, we don't like it, you're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad, but he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed. And it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there were 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world. It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. The politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plan. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others to inspire them. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Right, pretty powerful. That was from, that video was TEDx and Puget Sound, I think.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. No, you're fine. I was trying to think of when it was. But anyway, it was the original one. He is doing a lot on leadership. I highly recommend. He's got tons of resources and stuff out there.
Can you give his name again?
Yeah, Simon Sinek. S-I-N-E-K. He's incredibly brilliant in how he's talking about leadership. He's got several good books out. There's a book called The Power of Why, or Start With Why. It's a really short book, but it basically explains everything that he did there. I can also send you guys, I have a whole document of the whole why process that he just
I put some links in the board update.
Yeah.
In the board update this week. A question and comment. So first, I apologize for stepping out. So earlier in our day, I really tried to prioritize being present and forgot something and needed to address it. So I apologize. My comment is about the book. We got that book. Wasn't it the beginning of the year address by the superintendent about 2 years ago that we got Start With Why?
Dr. Buck, I think, initially.
Or did Dr. Buck?
Dr. Buck
I
did.
don't remember getting it, so maybe
It was before.
I think it was like maybe 2 years ago, but we did get that in
Right.
like recent years, yeah. And so that was really, I was glad to see it again because I thought it was really cool when we experienced it then. But I think we just got the book and didn't have the video, so thank you.
Yeah, I highly recommend, I always use the video because he is really inspiring speaker anyway. But the book is good too, when you're actually doing the work, right? To get from the why, the what, and the how. So as you can see yesterday, we started with some of the why, but it's very, very easy to get into the what and the how, which is now, like, we're gonna talk about some of those tactics today with your strategic plan and deliverables and things like that. So it is kind of a difficult thing. It's very easy to go back and forth between those two modes. But what we were trying to do, and what Dr. Watts talked a little bit about yesterday, is can we spend some time talking about what we believe, like, let's get that piece of it, and that sense of possibility. And then let that help infuse some of the what and the how and how we move forward. So, any other reactions to the video? Any insights that apply to you all?
I just want to follow up on what Dion was saying. When we get these books and we read them individually, but we don't follow through with any discussion or comment, they don't tend to go anywhere. So
Okay.
if we all can still find those books, then let's, Dr. Watts, if we can spend an informal
Yes.
going over it, you know, because otherwise we get the personal edification of it, but it doesn't go anywhere in terms of the organization. So
I'm so glad you pointed that out. So I have some clients, and they'll do this a lot. They'll buy a bunch of different books, and they
I hate book studies.
and the employees are like, I don't know if I'm supposed to do the 7 habits or the 5 yeah.
Moving my cheese.
Moving my cheese, yes.
Yeah.
That's the classic, right?
Somebody wrote a book after that was called I Moved Your Cheese.
And then it was your cheese is on the bus. Because we're going good to great, right? I've been
The power of having a shared experience about a book or a video is what you all do with it to apply it to your world. And so just spending out a whole bunch of stuff, what it ends up doing is creating noise in the system, and it makes leadership sound like a lot of buzzwords, and so don't do that. But yeah, I can give you all of the tools that we have for the Start With Why, and y'all can continue working through that. So let me turn this over to you. Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's interesting that we were talking about this. Yesterday, Sean and David and I were talking, and we're in a discussion about why people send their kids to private school. And one of the things, one of them was religion, was parochial schools, and Christian schools. For a lot of parents, that is the why. That I want my child in a school that teaches what I believe. So I think that is a really good example of a why. No, of course we can't. I'm not saying that we become brilliant in the schools, but that's a very deep why, because someone's religious belief is so deep that if I reach out to you and say your child will be inculcated with what you believe, that's a strong why. So I think the challenge for us, and we're going to get into this, is making sure that we have a strong, I don't know what that is, and that's what we'll do, but having something that penetrates like that. Again, at the end of the day, as he said, it's what they feel. Yeah.
I appreciate that reflection and for, so I had another point to make, but I wanted to relate to what you said, and that is that, having a belief system that is very personal to you and your family is, you want that reinforced. But I think it's also really good when you have a space where a belief system that is not your own is not you know, is not placed upon your family. So for those of us who are not Christians, it's a public education is a good place for us.
So, but we need to be speaking more. To
Relating to the video, you talked about people connect to what you believe, and it made me think of those of us who are wearing these Rise buttons, and nobody really knows what they are except those.
I do.
Okay, so very briefly, Savannah State University is 132 years old. Throughout its history, there always have been challenges about its leadership or how money is handled, or other students coming in, or is UGA trying to take her. There's all of these pressures on Savannah State. And as an alum, I just woke up one day after the last issue, which was the president changing and getting a new president. This will be the second president under the USG system, that I didn't want to be like the alumna of Morris Brown, where you just woke up one day and your university was just closed and you didn't know if it was going to be open or how it was going to reopen. So Morris Brown has reopened, but I looked at the mission of the university, a quote from the first president, and he said, "Tell them we are rising." And what people need to do to support the school, they can do it however they want, but they just need to rise. And to do that with goodwill. And so it's a goodwill campaign. That's all it is. If people want to give money, if they want to do whatever, they can do whatever they want. But if you are participating in the campaign, you are committing to post positive things, to be supportive, to support the people who are working through this very, very difficult time in the university's history. And so when he said that, I was like, oh, okay, well, people are doing what he said. They are supporting the belief.
Because it's the belief.
The belief is that the university can rise, should rise, deserves to rise, and we are supportive of it rising.
Right. So, it's very deceptive, because typically the belief is very short and it's very impactful words, right? It's you can have strategies and plans and manifestos and all this kind of stuff behind it. Ideally what you all want to get to is, if I walk in a room or I meet each one of you and I go, why should I send my child to your school? You all have the same passion, the same message, and the same belief. Every single one of you, without deviation. So that's just the board, right? You take that all the way through. You want the parents saying it, you want the teacher saying it, and when you can give people that soundbite that is real, it's real, it has to be authentic, it has to be real, and they believe in it, this is how you know that it's working, is when people lower in the organization start communicating that, right? So even with a campaign like that, they're looking around going, man, okay, they've got these buttons, but they're going, and they're going even further with it, even if I didn't ask them to. That's the power of the type of your why. And it looks easy to get to that one message. It actually takes a lot of work, which is what you guys are experiencing.
What's challenging for us is, whose why are we addressing? Is it the kindergartner? Is it the 6th grader? Is it the 12th grader who is at a stage where they're making their own life decisions? Is it the parents? Is it the caregivers? So whose why are we talking about? And not only that, they have different whys. Like, some parents are like, I need childcare during the day. Some parents are, I want my kids off my payroll. Some parents are, I have hopes and aspirations for my children and want to give them a broad education and an opportunity for a future. I've heard all of that from parents. For some kids, it's, I can't wait to graduate and get my degree so I can go work. Others, I want to go get a I want to stay in school for 20 years. So we are serving many different whys. And I think about how Apple markets, right? They have, hey, you want to control your life, here you go. But then they sub-market to the artistic subgenre we have the best camera and you can edit on your phone, much better than Google. To the musicians, we've got editing software that's better than anybody else. To the people who want to text back and forth, our messaging is better. So they market subcomponents of what they deliver niche-wise, and then they market by age. My in-laws get a very different marketing from Apple than my kids do. My kids are seeing things on social media and in text campaigns that my in-laws are not seeing, and they're seeing it in a different way.
Right.
And so they're appealing across many, many sub-genres as well. And I think so, it's easy for us to say we're gonna give children choice-filled lives. That's gonna appeal to a portion of the market that we're addressing, but not to everybody. So we need a bunch of sub-whys and sub-marketing campaigns, and it's almost like I'm sitting here listening to this going, we need to find some influencers, parents who have had successful experiences, students who have had successful experiences, administrators that love working here and stayed here and didn't go elsewhere, teachers who have had successful experiences. What are all the subgenres we need to bolster and market to and have a bunch of sub-whys?
So
Here's our big why, here's a bunch of
That's why I need to
sub-whys.
bolster the engagement
He's
and
applying.
marketing team so that we can do that work. I mean, I agree with everything you just said, but if you all can give me today the overarching why, I can execute on the sub-whys. You have a question in the back, in the very back.
Oh,
I just have a quick question for everybody on the board. Can anyone cite the current mission of SCCPSS?
From
That's
from
right.
school to world, prepared for.
Because I can't find it.
It's right here.
It's on the
I
right.
just pulled it up. To ignite a passion for the learning and teaching at high levels. This is the board. This is our mission and vision. I don't know if
Oh,
that.
not the district mission.
They should be the same.
They should be the same. They're the same.
And
I think I asked this question.
Can you pull it up, David, on the, can you pull it up on the screen?
Can we,
he's got it on a sheet of paper too.
Yeah, but I think it would be helpful for the next exercise if everybody can visually see it.
For the record, I quoted the old one. The new one, so my bad.
I'm not sure what the current
To ignite a passion.
There it is.
Okay,
Learning and teaching at high levels.
yes.
31 years ago, and I mentioned this before, when Georgetown Elementary opened, we had a principal by the name of Annie P. Wimbish. And she instilled in every teacher, every faculty member and staff that we were the best school in Chatham County. And everybody believed it. Even the students, every day, they would say, I want to make myself better today than I was yesterday. My teacher cannot do this for me. I must do it for myself.
Oh my gosh.
In the way I look, in the way I act, in the way I work, I would be my best self. And that went on every single day. And I didn't think much of it then until I went back to Georgetown and visited a teacher that's still there. And he said, remember how it was when we first started? We actually all believed that Georgetown was the best school in Chatham County. So if the leadership, a lot of, as I heard Dr. Watts mention, we don't talk about the principals. When you have the right leader in place at those schools, I would have climbed a mountain for Annie P. Wimbish because I believe in her vision and everybody bought into it.
Wow, that's way better than what I tell my son before he goes to school. Have a good day. I love you. Don't do dumb crap. But I don't say crap. That's the way, I'm gonna get right down what
Do
you
you have your
said.
phone?
I know, right?
I got the same speech.
I think our why goes way beyond just Savannah schools. I think especially now in our country, our why is a public education. And you kind of talked about it, Dion, it's a place for people who are not, the Christian Judeo necessarily go to a private parochial school. But why public education? I think that whole question, and we have people who are literally fighting against the concept and the idea of the worth of a public education. So I think it goes beyond just here in Savannah, but to the country as a whole. What are the whys for the benefits of a public education?
Absolutely. So I love that you just even said, okay, well, we can take it up. You can also take it to the sub-level too, right? So these are all, y'all are doing great as far as your questions and comments. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I will capture.
Awesome. We're going to actually get you all up and get you moving and engaged in some smaller groups. And I really would love for the cabinet team to join a group and participate. So as I just center and think about this conversation, I became an educator, and I am in this room today because I believe in the limitless potential of every student. And if you all remember in my interview, in some way, shape, or form, I said the same thing. And I'm in Savannah, Chatham County Public School System because I believe we have the agency and we're well positioned to do it. So with that said, we're going to divide up into some groups, and I would like for you to think about our collective why a public education is important, what we want for every student when they walk across the stage and we hand them their passport for the future. And you're going to capture your ideas on the chart paper in some small groups, and then we're going to decide what resonates the most in the group by using a dot protocol. So you're going to be given limited number of dots, and you will have to prioritize the words and or phrases that stand out to you the most, that resonate in the room the most. And then that will collectively be what I can work with to backwards map us into that in terms of the execution. So with that said, how many pieces of chart paper can we create? Yes.
Will it be divided within the questions that you sent, or just?
Oh, yeah.
I just want you to capture thoughts and phrases on the paper. You don't have to, I don't want it, because I think if I put too much structure around it, it will box people in. Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, we did our homework.
Like it.
Yeah, we actually did our homework.
Yeah.
That's why you don't do your homework, because sometimes the teacher doesn't pick it up. Exactly.
So if we can get 10 state stations, I'm gonna have, starting with Mr. Ray, number off 1 to 10.
1, 2.
Kurt, you're 3. Brian, 4. Mr. Ray is 5. Ooh, class.
Struggling. Ooh, we're struggling.
Let's start over.
1, 2, 3, 4. Still 5.
6, but I was thrown off.
Okay. I was too.
No, because I did.
8, 10.
1. 1?
Oh, yes.
I'm 10.
No,
She's 10.
Oh, you're 10. I'm sorry. I'm 1.
4, 5, 6,
7.
8.
Just new math. or-
Okay. 8. Chiefy Mom, 8. You're 8. You're 6.
Holy cow.
All right, all the ones up there at the poster up front where Sharon is. All the 2s over here with Tamika. Where Tamika, you just leave that right there. Slide these down. All the 3s right here. Should be just a couple of people. All the 3s. 1, 2 here. 4s over where Paul is, you're 4. 5s over at that poster. 6. 7. 8. David, if you're 8, go with David. And 9 and 10's back here with me. You're right with me. If you're a 9 or a 10, come back here with me.
Where's the 3s? Where are the 3s?
Oh, that's all right.
Who's the 5?
directions, next set of directions. So in your hand, you should have 4 dots. Does anyone not have dots? No dots right here.
They don't want me to vote.
Kurt has yours.
That was intentional.
Each individual person should have 4 dots.
I gave her his dots.
Okay, we are going to engage in a gallery walk. This is a teaching pedagogical strategy. You're going to rotate to your, is this your left?
That's all
I
right.
don't have a lot of spatial intelligence. Your right. You have 4 dots. I want you to think about those dots as if they are money. So your first round, I just want you to shop. Because when I go to the mall, I go to all the stores first and then figure out, ooh, I like all these things, but I can only buy 3 things, or my husband might divorce me. Right, so I got to decide on the 3 things that I'm going to buy versus the 5 things. You only get to pick 4 things. So the first round is a shop. Your second round, you are to place a dot beside the word, phrase, or idea that most resonates with you from any poster in the room. But you only get 4 dots. Once you spin your 4 dots, you can, and by the way, you can put all 4 dots in one. If one thing jumps out at you the most, if you want the Louis Vuitton and not the Michael Kors, put all 4 dots in one place, and then you can go home with your Louis Vuitton. So you decide on how you want to use your currency. Does everybody understand? This is a silent solo activity because it's your money, your thoughts, your opinion. You don't group walk. This is a solo trip to the mall. All right, you can start when you're ready.
Bring in your other right.
As you walk the room, what did you notice? As you walk the room, what did you notice in terms of where the dot placements were occurring?
Everyone seems to want opportunity.
Opportunity.
Opportunities resonates. What else resonates?
Limitless.
Limitless. Maybe that I shouldn't have used that word when I opened it up because I think that kind of maybe moved the audience in a certain way. Any other words or phrases that resonated?
Forward.
Student focus.
Forward thinking.
Forward thinking. I saw the word future quite a few times. What did you experience from that activity? Like personally?
That we don't follow instructions. You were not quiet.
Yes, I did have to use all my teaching skills and strategies to get us on track.
We started buying stuff before we had shopped the whole.
Yes.
Okay. But as you thought about our aspirational state and how people have answered those questions, what feeling did you have about our purpose and role?
So I think that it is, that we are probably all in this room from a deeply personal commitment, and the way in which we maybe express that commitment might be different, but like hearing Bernadette's story of how she came into teaching was great. Like I've never heard that from Ms. Ball. Sorry. But it was just, and it's to me, it's that kind of passion for education that she clearly had that led her into teaching that create all the things that are around the room. It's that passion and the commitment that's, I think, comes out, however we define our life.
That this district has delivered on limitless opportunities, empowering young people for decades. Many of us are a product of those opportunities. Many of us have children being given those opportunities, but it is difficult, frustrating. Where is it? Right there on my thing. Let's move, let's make it happen kind of thing. That other people don't feel that those opportunities are there. And then I think we all know that there are students and families that haven't fully appreciated that they can have those opportunities and how to get them to buy into that. And I know that's more than just the district, that's the community, because everybody has so many things that are in front of them each day that makes it difficult to prioritize some of those opportunities maybe.
And I think part of that is people don't know about all of the opportunities. You know, that has not been our forward message of, we have, and the list goes on and on. You know, for instance, the person that contacted us the other day, he described his son, and the question was, what school would my son fit in? And I think that is the question that all parents ask is, what do you have to offer for my child? It's not for all children, for my child. And if they were provided with that list of opportunities as opposed to, you know, I don't think people, I think some of the criticism that we've gotten has not been because people are against public schools. I think it's that people don't know I was one of them. I didn't know everything that Chatham County Public Schools offered. My experience with Chatham County Public Schools, because I'm not from here, my experience with Chatham County Schools was limited to test scores and what I heard in the community. Now, when we went on the tour of all of the programs, when I got to Islands High School and saw the horticulture, God, why I picked that word of all words. I saw the plants. And the vet program, when I had the experience with the welding teacher at Woodville Tompkins, when I ate the food from Tompkins, you know, a lot of people don't know about that.
Yes.
So.
Hawkins, Brown, and then Hall.
I was a student in our district when everything was available everywhere. And that experience would have been different for parents because shop, home ec, whatever, was at Beach. It was also at Windsor. And so you didn't have this speckling of content across the district that is very difficult to support. And that contributes to folks not knowing. We put a lot of energy in messaging. You know, we have the expo, we have everything online, we have the choice program guide. We try to tell the story, but I agree with you. If you're coming from the perspective of what do you have to offer my child? Oh, and by the way, what do I have to apply to get my child there? Like what is openly available for my child versus what do I have to think 2 years in advance to try to get my child into? I think that is a challenge. I've been pretty open that the movement that we made before I was in the district and before I'd even moved back home, the movement that we made in the 90s to create all these specialized cells and eliminate redundancies at schools, that was an effort to bring people back from the private schools, has been difficult to continue to manage, and we've had to move away from it. We were at one time where we had one program in one place, we did not duplicate it, and everybody who wanted that was supposed to go to that school. Well, we stopped that when we did duplication of construction at Woodville Tompkins and Windsor. So I have long, and then we did the same thing again with some of the CTAE programs at Woodville Tompkins at Savannah High. So I think one of the things that would be beneficial is looking at how can more things be made available to more people so you don't have to strategize and politic and move and change apartments or do whatever to try to get to the location to be in the program that you want your young person in. Because we created that with magnets and then choice and everything else that has grown out of those from then.
I was just listening. A lot of times, I'm going to say this now, I was going to say, people from the days of the 70s and the 80s, they ask me all the time, why we don't have shop? Y'all don't teach shop anymore in home economics. And I try to explain that there's so much more. As Dr. Hawkins Brown said, it's not in every school. But one of the major issues here is to the buy-in for our middle schools. I never forget my daughter, she went to Hurd. And for middle school, she went over to Schumann and she asked me, Mama, a lot of my friends at Hurd, I don't see them at this school, so where are they going to school? And I had to just tell her, well, baby, when they go to middle school, they go to private schools. So that's the crux of the problem, I think, is the middle school trying to, so we came with the K-8 concept to pull more kids in from private schools. So we have the K-8, you know, Hanson, Georgetown, and everything. So that's a major problem with this, as far as the divide is with the middle schools.
So I'd like to encourage us to go back up.
Oh,
to our
thank
big-
you.
to
I
our-
was getting ready to say that.
To our big why.
Yes, let's get
And
back up here.
instead of talking about this school, what is our why as a district? And to me, our why as a district is more than our students, our teachers. It is the power of our district. And that's why, and this, you know, my bias is community centered because that's what I do for a living, and I do what I do for a living because it's what's in my heart, and so it carries forward. But I truly believe that we as a district, through our students, through our administrators, through our faculty, can be a positive change agent in so many ways for businesses, for students, for families, and that the opportunities, you don't have to, kind of what Dion I think is saying too, is you don't have to shop for a school. That our why is you can go to any school and know that your kid's going to get a great education.
Yes. I'm coming back over here in just a second, but I do want to echo, because I need to live in the moment of aspiration for just a second, and I really need you all to be with me on this. We live so much, we work so much in a place of deficit, what we don't have, what is wrong, what we need to do better. I get up every single morning bright and early, and I work until the sun long goes down, because I believe in what we can do right. I believe that we can do better. And I'm reminded of a little story. You all think about a lotus. What does a lotus grow in?
Mud.
Mud. Mud is murky, mud is filthy, mud is dirty. But what is on top of that water when that flower comes out? It's beautiful, pristine. It's amazing. And I just believe we can rise above the mud and the muck and what's wrong, and we can get to the beauty and the pristine, but there has to be an unwavering belief. Because if not, we're going to get way deep in the mud and we won't ever get out of the mud. And we contribute to the brand. Some of the things that we're saying in this room right now perpetuate the negative brand. So come up with me, come up. Let's stay aspirational right now. We will get through the mud and the muck. If you look at my little chart, at the top of it says perseverance. I will get you through the mud and the murk. I promise you. That's why you hired me. But I need you all to stay aspirational.
You was living rent free. I'm tired of hearing we can. Because I sit here and wake up that we already are. We just need to, as you said, grow it and broaden it. We already are. I'll die on that hill because I like to die on it. We already are offering opportunity. If people don't want to find it, it's there. I'm sorry. We are giving it to them. Sometimes they don't want to hear it because then they don't have something to fuss about. Okay? I was rolled around in middle school to all the people that were thinking that they couldn't afford private school to try to get their parents to, well, here's the private school kid, the public school kid from the neighborhood. We have the opportunities. They've always been there. So stop saying we can get to opportunities. We are giving students opportunities. We are giving families opportunities. It's just, I think, helping students, because sometimes they don't have the community to build them up, to find that teacher that says, here's the opportunities, I'm trying to give them to you. What you just said, Annie P. Winbush, my mom worked for her too. I heard that plenty of times at home. Getting that type of mentality in each one of our school systems so that everybody does wake up where you are on persevering and not like, oh, it's just another day.
Another day of problems.
Yeah.
But why do we think that we are in the mud and deficient? Like,
I don't think so.
I don't think that, and I haven't been sitting in a place of strategic thinking, believing that we're at the bottom, needing to move up. Now, I know that quantitatively looking at the scores, test scores, that we have some challenges, but I wasn't looking there, and I definitely don't inherit the perspective of people who don't have kids in the schools who are sitting at a private school telling us that the district is at the very bottom. So the need for improvement, I definitely see and understand, but I believe in the district, and I am personally offended, not by anybody in this room in particular, but I am offended when people who are not from Savannah come to Savannah, tell us our district and our city is backwards, and then proceed to try and take advantage of everything that we create in Savannah. Beg, borrow, and steal to come get a job in Savannah. Take a pay cut to come and get a job in Savannah because they want to be here, but then the things that we have created are totally deficient, and we need to move aside so they can fix it for us. So I'm wondering, are our words really conveying that we think we have such an inferior product, or are we over amplifying the criticism because we're using it as a jumping off place? Like, and shrimp and crabs grow in the mud, by the way, so just want y'all. Mud is awesome. I study mud for a living. Mud is awesome. But why are you feeling that we are speaking so negatively or coming from such a negative space?
Because I feel and I hear, I'm just taking in data from the last two conversations, and when statements start with the problem is, we don't do enough of, we should be, it's the I guess the beginning of the language, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of, that to me is deficit, mm-hmm, versus, as Simon Sinek says, starting from a place of why, starting from a place of aspiration. So it's just the data that I've collected, the words when I hear, when the sentence starts, it starts at a deficit and not an asset. So that's okay. And I don't experience that, and I'm new to Savannah, right? When I go into all of these schools. And so I struggle with why everybody else here, who's the products of this district, start there. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, I grew up here and this is what my life has been. Mm-hmm. I can't understand why I can see it, but other people articulate it very differently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's helpful, because when I hear criticism, and I want to be very clear on the record and on tape that I wasn't referring to our new superintendent coming in and being critical.
I did not say
so I want to start off with a good relationship. Yeah, I want everybody to know that.
I did not even do it that way.
But working in a university setting, working in the community, parents move here and they have opinions and they share with me, oh, Dion, what do you think? I hear that from the come heres. And so that's the position from which I was speaking. But I'm with Sean on the why, being a broad family why with several spokes coming out of it. So to me, back to your 30,000 foot view and focusing on a multifaceted why, the parents are the arbiters of the choice. The parents decide where their kids are going to go. So we market that big why to them, because a kid is not going to go to a school that the parent doesn't want them to go to, private or public.
Right. And what you just said is brand. We're going to give you choice now and choice in the future. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? When I hear that, I get excited about that. Mm-hmm. We're going to give you choice now and where you pick for your child, and we're going to give you choice in the future. And if that choice is to get your child off the payroll, if that choice is to send the kid to go to college, it's a choice, right? But we want kids to have choices. And they can then choose. I don't want a child to graduate and have to go to the military because they could not do these three other things. I want them to have a choice. So, yes.
Planning is not siloed, right? So we can all put on our aspirational hat. As a board, we also have to put on our operational hat through policy. And then we let superintendent and staff put on and execute and deliver. Put on the execution hat and delivery, right? So I'm the district's biggest cheerleader when I'm out in the community. I point to my children who are all in the public school system who have had limitless opportunities. But I also deal with the newcomers here and the people who have been here their entire lives who we've all said it, who don't know everything this district has to offer and are perpetuating criticisms that they've heard from others, number one, but also we have to live in the reality, which is our test scores are where they are. That's what everyone sees. Our state rating is where it is. That's what people see. And we all make judgments based on the 3-second soundbite we hear on the news, we see on the newspaper, we get on social media, and RY has to address those realities.
Absolutely.
So I can rephrase we can provide more opportunities to the 74% of the kids who are currently not getting them. There's a way to aspirationalize and recognize the reality of our data.
Yeah.
So when I say I think we can do better here, I'm with Dr. Bringman. We are doing all of the great things the best school districts in the country are doing. We're not doing it broad enough, and I want to do it broadly and deeply. And we're doing it shallowly in some places, more broader in others. I want to take that small piece that's top of the, and make that 100%. And we're maybe 5% or 10% or 30%, whatever it is. So when we're doing strategic planning, we can all be aspirational, but we have to live in the pragmatism as well and marry them up.
Yes.
And we can identify choice-filled lives, limitless opportunities, but we have to operationalize that, the board through policy.
Yes.
And responding to why does Apple, their why is to sell iPhones,
Yes.
right? Our why is to create.
No, otherwise we change the status quo.
It's to change the status quo.
Oh, crap.
But they're,
Take all your money.
They got all of mine.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not really a doctor.
If they lost money for 5 perpetual years, they wouldn't be in business anymore. So, but you can have both. They're not mutually exclusive, right? So our why can be to deliver a world-class education and provide everyone limitless opportunities, while also changing the perspective and perception of the district and marketing to more people with facts and our outcomes. And they're not mutually exclusive. So we can talk about data, we can get in the mud and counter-argument while also...
I totally agree,
Right,
and that's
so-
how I operate. So to me, it's a gap analysis. Here's the aspirational state, here's the current state. Our work every day is to close the gap, right? But when we never define the aspirational state, I don't know what I'm closing the gap to.
Right.
I don't know where to plan from. Is this about test scores? Is that all we're trying to do? Because if that's the case, then we can teach to the test, but I have a feeling that in this community it's more than that. It's about the experience. It's what we want kids to leave here with. There are so many things that are involved in that, and we can do that work, but we have to define where we're going. So it's both and. It's what you said and, right?
Shifting gears just, because opportunities has been talked about so much and we all want opportunities for our kids, we could give kids an opportunity to learn how to build a covered wagon. Right? So I think we have to connect the opportunity to what they're going to do with that opportunity. And to me, that's the truer root of the why, is the opportunity is the mechanism by how they get to be blank. So it's just
All right.
just a thought.
Final word, and then we're going to take a break and then transition, because you all basically have given me what I need.
Good, go.
Yes, we're good.
Done.
We've done what I needed.
I think we're on the right track when you say you're going to augment our communications department. Because I've said for years, we don't get our story out broadly enough and frequently enough for the naysayers to be countered.
Yes.
So if we need to make a budget where Stacey Jennings' office has everything it needs to have Savannah schools out there in the public. If you all remember last week, I mentioned that big sign that's on Victory Drive by Eric's Seafood Place as you're going over the bridge to Whitmarsh. I was astounded to see that. I said, oh my gosh, how wonderful. And all it was we need bus drivers, you know, but it had a kid in the bus and the bus. That's what we need more and more and more to get our message out. So you're on the right track.
We need to bolster that department, but we also have to watch our words. We have to watch our actions. We have to be mindful of when we speak, where we start. And I believe in starting from aspirational and acknowledging where we're not meeting that, so that we can meet that.
And I know you're trying to get us to a break, and I don't disagree with that, but the strongest communication tool is word of mouth. So we have to build believers in our why, believers in our district, from elementary, middle, high, whether you have kids in this district or not, community-wide across the board, in my opinion. So it's not an either or, it's an and, but I think we can't say, oh, it's all up to the communications team to blanket the world with good news. If we don't have the positive word of mouth that backs that up, we're not going to get to where we need to
But
be.
Denise, the word of mouth, we need the communications at the school level too.
But the word of mouth
Everything
comes from
good.
experience.
That's what I'm saying. Everything good that's going on at Hess K-8, that should be broadcast so everyone knows about it. Everything good that's going on at Hodge, it should be broadcast.
We
And
do a lot of that.
enough. We do some, but we don't do enough.
Real quick analogy. East Bluffs passed in all 66 precincts with 63% plus of the vote,
Yes.
right? And in politics, 52% is a landslide.
That's right.
Why did that happen? Because we're constantly putting out good news updates on East Bluffs, and several of us in this room did multiple dog and pony shows at business meetings, civic meetings, PTA meetings, etc., talking about how successful it's been, not focused on a particular school, and it was to everyone in the community. And it wasn't.
And that was for East Bluff.
That was for East
But
Bluff.
we don't do that for.
But that's my point. So let's do a.
That's once every 5 years.
Yeah, but like we do community open houses twice a year, things like that. I mean, anyway, I'm getting into operational stuff, but that's a perfect example of somewhere where we were really successful, and we did the communications piece, but it wasn't just focused on our customers. It was focused on the entire community.
But we also had
have an
business
example
partners
of how we
and
do it right.
stakeholders that were also paying for their own campaign in support of ours too.
Right, right.
But there are ways to take that, and I want to hear more about that. And I'm glad we have that example of an exemplar. My point is, we can use that example, and that should be about academics and our kids. East Wash is important, and I'll need everybody to hear me say it, right? But if we are spending time, money, and energy to get the positive potential about that, we can take that same strategy and apply it to our children. That's why we get up every day. Not for the building that they go to school in. Again, that's the tail wagging the dog.
Mr. Hediger has some comments.
So, Ms. Grabowski said something that resonated with me from 15 years ago. Everything we're talking about is important, and what you're talking really about is a balance and a mix, because it's not just one thing. It's not just community meetings, and it's not advertising, it's not a billboard. To Dr. Watts' credit, when she's come into this district, the first thing she said was, I want to ensure everyone has an experience, a positive experience. And where do you get that? You get that in the hallways of the school, you get that in the classroom, you get that from the relationships with your teachers and your educators and the staff. Customer service oriented. When people walk out of that room, out of that building with that positive experience, they will tell a few people. Word of mouth is absolutely positive because it's a trusted source. When I came to Savannah in 2000, before I began working with the school district, and then we had our first son, Caden, we didn't know anything about the school district. I had one person tell me, you gotta look at private. I had another person tell me about this great little neighborhood school right down the road in Georgetown, and all the great things they did and how the caring people they had in that building. And I did not hear an ad on the radio. I did not see a billboard. I listened to a friend, a trusted friend, who had a positive experience. Why did they have that feeling? Because of the experience in the schoolhouse. That experience is what needs to be replicated at every single building in this school district, and we absolutely can do that. The marketing and the branding will come with that as well and will supplement it. But it won't work if you don't have the positive human experience.
But Kurt, so many of our adversaries are people who don't have children in school. If you look at who comes to talk at our board meetings, you
Right.
don't see many parents there.
This is correct.
You see stakeholders,
Yes.
taxpayers.
Yes.
We have to get to them also. It
Well-
can't just be what we do.
I'll leave one piece on that to consider, and there's an old marketing component that says, one person who has a great experience in whatever, Chick-fil-A, or when they come out and the meal was great, they're gonna tell 3 people. But if they get a bad sandwich that didn't have that pickle on there, they're gonna tell 3,000 people. And what are they gonna do? They're gonna go to social media and do it. So yes, we have to continue to get our narratives out there. It is a critical component of all that we do, but it's not the only thing, I guess, is really what I wanted to stress.
It's just a multi-pronged
Bingo,
strategy.
exactly.
So it is 10:35. Let's take a 10-minute break, and at 10:45, what's next on the agenda?
Strategic plan.
We will we'll go from aspirational more to strategy with a conversation with Mr. Feliciano about strategy with our strategic plan. So we'll see everybody back at 10:45. Sharon, if you want to, who's collecting us? Am I collecting us?
District 1 is here.
I believe District 1 is here, District 5 is here.
3, 6, 7.
Staff is making its way back.
Chair around.
Our chair is,
Yell down the hall.
we got a couple board members in the
Somebody was gonna
hallway.
get him a watch.
Go snatch a neck.
That's not my job.
Snatch a neck. Go snatch a neck.
Are you in the video too? It's just me and Lee.
You still got votes, don't worry. You got more votes in here. You could catch more money.
Let's get started. You do have a conversation that you absolutely feel like you must finish, if you'll finish it in the hall. Let's go from aspiration to strategy now. Go from this is where we want to be, and the strategic plan and the accountability conversation is the how we're going to get there and how we will know when we get there. So with that said, I'll turn it over to David Feliciano to talk about an overview around our strategic plan and accountability.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. We're here this morning to talk about my favorite topic, strategic planning and alignment. The following is a recap on where we are today with the strategic plan so that we can strategize on moving forward and be more future focused. On the screen is a component of the strategic plan that was worked on in 2021. A year-long process was spent with community focus group meetings, planning teams, action teams, and multiple board and cabinet workshops. The outcome was the work of a unique vision, mission, and 7 guiding principles that were adopted by the board. But wait, there is more. Included in the work is the second component of the strategic plan, the school board's strategic map. The map shows the priority goals and performance objectives. The goals cover from student success to resource stewardship. These 4 goals are supported by 13 performance objectives that are more specific to the work that needs to be accomplished. But wait, there's still more to be covered here. The third component of the strategic plan is the district accountability system. District accountability system shows the performance measures, base, targets, and strategies. Each objective can have multiple measures, and each measure can have multiple strategies. These measures we refer to as KPIs and KPOs, as key performance indicators or key performance outcomes. On the screen is an overall visual that shows the work of the school board and that of the administration, from strategic to operational. The strategic plan consists of 4 items: the strategy map and the district accountability system. The board adopts the strategic plan and map, and the administration works on establishing the district accountability system. That is the instrument we use for reporting, evaluating, and monitoring performance. Hence, we call it the DAS-REMI. This tool is the mechanism that shows how the administration will achieve the school board strategic plan. The DAS-REMI is a living document. It is reviewed yearly by Cabinet for updates and changes, and it is taken yearly to the Board Accountability Committee for review and feedback. Board Accountability is our sounding board to let us know, does it make sense, the changes? Is it clear? Can we do better? Last but not least, now is the opportunity to refine, align, and establish IPOs, which are indicators of progress. I also call them PPMs, which is Priority Performance Indicators. And if you leave me up here anymore, I'm going to come up with It is an opportunity for you to let Cabinet know what you believe should be measured, monitored, and reported. What you believe will make sense to our stakeholders, and what you believe will show progress you are looking for. The information that is collected today will be taken to a Cabinet retreat to continue the work before it goes to the board for final approval. With that said, I will turn it over to our facilitator.
Okay. Okay, so I need you to stay close with your acronyms, because I might need some help. So, first, I want to hear, Dr. Watts, can you set up exactly what you would like to hear from this piece, and then I can also ask from some of the board.
Let me hear from them first.
Okay. Yes.
We asked you to speak on this in the interview process. You spoke on it some there, but you were trying to get the job. So I would love to know, now that you are in the job, what about this works for what you want to do with what we just spoke about for the last 2 hours? And what of those 7, what part of it, if you could change things or sit down with us and work together to change it, would you remodel to make it easier for you to do the operational side of this? I know that's a big ask.
That is a big ask, and I have a lot of thoughts about, oh goodness, can you go back to the slide that has,
That's real busy. I like to move forward.
so, when I see this, when I look at this, this it's a little uncomfortable for me to have to talk about this because I'm trying to stay out of evaluation and judgment mode, right? And just listen and learn. Because remember, that's what I said I was gonna do.
Yeah.
But you're pushing, so I'm gonna
Please
push.
do.
I'm gonna be pushed. So when I look at this, it could belong to any district
Yes.
anywhere in the country. The action steps, or what are the things in the white boxes again?
Those are the 13 performance objectives that are more focused on the work from the goals that are listed above them.
So I guess when I look at this, I see a desire for more. I don't understand how those performance objectives are being operationalized. Those are the actions. Are those things on that list going to get us to the aspirational state that we just named? There's just a lot of other questions. It really raises more questions to me than anything. And I had never really seen a strategic plan that was so light. I kept saying, where's the rest of it? I kept clicking to say, where's the rest of the plan? And there is no rest of the plan. That's the plan. That's where
So do you mean the KPOs under each one of those white boxes?
I guess, yes.
You saw the KPOs and believed they were not sufficient, or you didn't see the KPOs under each objective?
I maybe didn't see the KPOs under one objective. And the way it's on the website, it's several clicks. I'm used to seeing a strategic plan that here it's a plan that can either be printed or, I like the fact that it's electronic, but it can be printed or planned. You can read, here's the thing we're trying to accomplish. Here are the strategies that we're going to do to accomplish it. And here's how we're going to measure it.
Okay.
You have to, conceptually, the way ours is articulated right now, you have to put all that together. It doesn't flow in a way that's natural. And so it takes several clicks. I finally did get to the KPOs, but somebody had to tell me how to get there.
Okay.
So again, if I'm an external person looking at this, it's very difficult to really kind of put conceptually, what are we doing?
So.
That's very difficult for me to, it has been difficult for me to pull it out.
So I appreciate the question and the answer, and just want to jump in because the DAS REMI is the strategic plan. And we moved to this really hyperactive online version of articulating that. And it was my fear when we did it that we would get too far away from the PDF that is the strategic plan, that people would just be clicking on those buttons and not understand that all of those things were derivative of the DAS REMI. And that is what has occurred. Every objective has a KPO. Every KPO is something measurable for what we do in the district. But if you're using the web, if you're accessing it online and you're using that version, you don't understand that all of those boxes are a summary of the DAS REMI. That is what, and we learned that in the application process. We articulated it, and I think staff are trying to address it. But that you still have that opinion says to me it's not been fixed. Because the DAS REMI is the plan. And all of the visuals and stuff, all of the glossy brochures, the way forward, all of that is a summary of the DAS REMI. And if that's not clear, then it's still broken.
Is it just me? I mean, even when you say words like the DAS REMI is the plan, that I'm struggling to conceptualize that. I thought the DAS REMI was more the measures.
The DAS REMI, so the objectives, each strategic objective is the black box. That is what we're to be doing. And then under each one of those is the measure to tell us whether or not we're getting there.
But we're missing a really critical piece. We don't have the strategies about how we're going to get there, and we also don't have any prioritization, I don't think, that's reflected right now. So to me, those are the two of the missing pieces of our strategic plan. Is I agree that we need to personalize it more so that it is more reflective of our district. And I mean, I pulled it up right now just so I can refresh my own memory. if you click on plan, it says objectives and measures, but the strategies are not there.
But that's the summary, that's not, that is the summary of the plan. That's not the PDF of the plan.
Well,
That
where
is-
is, how do you
that's
get to the
the graphical-
PDF? How do you get to the PDF of the plan?
It's on the Board Accountability System webpage. That's kind of the point I'm making.
Right, and just to clarify, there is a disconnect. Like I said, there are three components to the strategic plan, and there's a disconnect for a community member that wants to see from A to Z the entire scope. It is broken. You have to click through several iterations to get down to the granularity where you can see the strategies that apply to specific measures, that apply to specific objectives,
Dr.
that
Watson,
apply to the goal.
the other finalists for the superintendency told us, I remember Dr. Hoskins Brown and I looking at each other. They said the same thing that you're saying. Do you remember? The other finalists for the superintendency also had problems.
Well, not finalists, but other folks who demonstrated
Yes.
interest in
Interest in
the
that.
application.
Okay. Had problems.
Don't want anybody to leave here and think
Thank
they
you.
were finalists.
Thank
Right,
you.
because the other thing that I wanted to do was, okay, if this is the strategic plan, then I wanted to listen to the budget conversations to see if you all were making budgetary decisions, because I was interviewing around the time of the budget, like how much of your budgetary decisions were actually grounded in the strategic plan. Well, the gap for me was I couldn't really figure out the strategic plan, so I didn't know if the things that you all were talking about, because the two things should be married. Your budget should reflect your priorities and your goals. Because at the end of this year, I want to be able to say to you all, here is what you invested in your budget, and here are the outcomes of that. Were we successful, or were we not successful with those investments? Because you have to say, are we getting a return on investment?
So there's your cabinet workshop.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Mr. Feliciano can, chime in. Can this be salvaged and?
Oh, absolutely.
It can be salvaged.
Absolutely, that what I'm hearing, it needs to be more community friendly. That's a key item, so that anyone can click on it and understand what are the priorities, what is important to the board and to the school system.
I really hope that you hear something else in addition to that, because that's how we got to this place of all this click and get one pager. There's a 20-page PDF of the DAS Remy from 2020 that we have not populated on the page for 2023. It got summarized into the way forward, so that's one reason why people can't find it. If you go to the DAS Remy webpage, the first click is the way forward, the strategic plan. If you go down further, there are PDFs of the DIP DAS Remy from previous years, 2020, 2021. We don't have one for 23. People are just being directed to the way forward. But if you go to the 20-pager, it tells you the strategy and why all these things were chosen and how they're being measured, and it's written in narrative and not bullet points. So I agree and support that these clicks ought to all be user-friendly for the community to see very quickly in summary, but they also need to lead to the original complete narrative so that you can also read that and understand what you're looking at.
So so now that Dr. Hoskins Brown has navigated me to the plan, number one, I would have, anyways, we beat that horse. When I look at our strategies, they are missing the how. So on the first page, teaching and learning, minimize the disruption of the teaching and learning process by blah, 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 through X, Y, Z. And I mean, they're almost so big that, to me, that's where some of that detail is missing. And I realize, oh, this is really in the weeds.
Yeah.
No, actually, this is very relevant to this conversation because there are two things that I'm just hearing already from a theme perspective. There is the packaging, is it simple to access, is it simple to understand, how many clicks, and so that there's some confusion, they're disconnected. So how do you package it for ease of understanding and consumption is one thing. That's one conversation. Another conversation is what you said. The point of all of this is how you run your business or your organization. So now what you're getting to is, well, we like the strategies and the initiatives, right? So I want to just make sure, do we need, because I want to have both conversations, because this gets into what y'all need it to be, which she also needs it to be. But is it for simplicity's sake to say work needs to be done on connecting all of this and simplifying, making it easier to access?
Yes.
And does anything need to be added to that?
No.
Okay, so that's one action item to take away. Now, what you've been bringing up is
Our strategies aren't SMART, the SMART.
that the strategies are there.
Specific, measurable, action-oriented, what's the PAR, and then time constrained. So you know that SMART acronym.
Yeah.
We're missing that, and to me, that's a really critical piece, because that's where we understand the prioritization, that's where we understand the budget, that's where we understand the resources that go into the implementation.
What did we fail to do to not have SMART goals?
I don't know, but I think we can get, I don't know.
No,
what
I mean,
the-
we meet about this every couple of months. We read this as a board every October. What did we fail to do as a team that we aren't there to have this? Because we need to fix that.
So the SMART goals are not explicitly stated in SMART goal format, but if you look at the chart, I think these should be SMART. I think these are SMART goals, right? Here's our actual and here's our target. So they're there, they're just not written in SMART goal format.
And they're disconnected because those are under the objectives that are disconnected from the strategy. So
Okay, but
it's
y'all are
like
looking
trying
at
to
two different
understand.
documents. You're looking at the DAS Remy. You're still looking at the summary document.
And that in and of itself highlights a problem that we're looking at different things and we haven't defined what each of the, because I don't know what a strategic map is. I don't know what that is.
So I'm asking this, and I'm sorry, Roger, I'll just make this comment. I'm asking this as chair of the committee whose responsibility is to make this awesome, working with the staff member whose team puts a lot of time in trying to make this awesome. So I'm asking, if we don't know now, can you share with us later what has been missed besides us knowing that the documents are not linked? Okay, we got that. Besides they're not being linked, besides us meeting about 6 times a year, besides us bringing it to the board in full every fall, what else needs to be done to fix the things that you're pointing to us could stand to be improved?
And I want to say how hard Dr. Hoskins Brown has worked on this over the last 3-4 years. So please do not, Dion, see this in any way.
No, it's
as,
not at all.
Oh, no, I'm not.
I mean, if anything,
Thank
it's
you.
a growth conversation for us, because certainly no one could have put more energy and time and commitment into a plan that you have done.
Thank you for being so blue about that. I am not injured. I thank you for being so blue. I just want to make sure that I understand so I can give David and his team all of what they need. So thank you.
And to that point, I 100% agree with Ms. Hall, both to Dr. Hoskins Brown and to Mr. Feliciano and his team, because I know that y'all have worked really hard. And I also know that you are trying to work within a platform that you are given that may or may not even be the best platform for it. So there's that whole side of the discussion. So please don't, there's my blue.
Yes.
Oh, well, just to reflect from this morning, we've talked about the why, the what, and the how, and it seems like it's obvious why we have this strategic plan, and we understand what it is, so we're just trying to now figure out how to make it more community friendly, stakeholder friendly, and friendly for us, the board is concerned. So what can we do to make it better? As navigate to the plan and find out, how to merge it all together with the why and the what. So the question is how.
Roger.
So, first a question. Is it the role of the strategic, should the strategic plan have our why? That's just a general question. I think it should. I found it troubling, and I'm just as guilty as anyone. I found it troubling that this morning when someone asked what our mission was, that we didn't know. What that says to me is that we don't have a why that is strong enough for us all to walk out of here reciting. Okay? My observation. There is so much, I think, that needs to be done with this. I don't think we have enough time in one morning to do it. I am going to propose that this be done either in informal or the board accountability, and you guys, you know what you need to work on. You guys work on this and bring a report back, because I think this could literally take the rest of the day.
And to that point, can I ask another question? So, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but in previous experiences, the strategic plan is really a function of the administration.
That's how it works here.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the strategic, I mean, it's not, I don't think it's uncommon for there to be a public-facing strategic plan that is that higher level, that's the more succinct document that gives a clear understanding of the direction and the priorities of the district. And then there's the work plan that has the strategies, that has the specifics, and that work plan is what's evaluated through the metrics that are reflected on the DAS REMI. So we still have that transparency of the detail. So I think that, I don't think we're that far from where we need to be. I think we just need to tweak the way the information maybe is organized and presented into how it can, because I think at the end of the day, what we want is something that is going to be relevant and beneficial for the community, for the families, but probably most importantly for the administration, because it is guiding your work.
I want to go back to what Hoskins Brown said, because you said it is, but then I hear, but I'm also hearing you say, I want to be able to give the administration what they need. So tell me more about that.
So the way forward is the public-facing strategic plan that was developed with the community by the district to be the large outward-facing plan. It was then the structure that the operational strategic plan, the DIP-DAS REMI, was built on. So all the measurables were aligned with that. So we had community groups, board groups, that was actually led by the consultant company that the former superintendent brought in. Everybody brainstormed, what do you think this should be? And that yielded the way forward. Then, after that was approved by the board as its strategic vision, it was then populated with all the measurables that the administration felt was aligned with that. And so all of those key performance indicators of the things that were identified as important, particularly by the cabinet and the superintendent, were then loaded into the way forward. And then we had the DAS REMI.
So I'm used to all that process, but when you say you want to be able to give them, as a board member, I'm trying to figure out
So
what you mean.
I chair the board accountability committee. So when the staff comes forward to that board committee, they present on the schedule that's in the DAS REMI all the reports that say this is how we did on these data. And then when they bring that to the committee, which has other board members on it, we say, yeah, this is how we want to receive this information. This is the calendar at which we think it works well. We say, yes, we support this strategy by the superintendent and cabinet to go to the board for approval in the fall. This year, I think it's November, because we're like a couple of months behind. So the way that we support is we agree, this is the work that we think should be measured. This is the calendar upon which we think we ought to receive it. When the board votes on that, then that is the contract with the superintendent and the cabinet that says, this is how we're going, this is what we expect to be measured. Like, nobody's gonna pull some extra measure out of their hat and say, you're failing on this objective because you haven't measured this.
Got it.
So my support is only in helping to translate facilitating that process from the staff to the committee to the board, and then I'm done with it.
But it sounds like you're thinking something different.
Well, I felt like there was a tension there that explains it. And I guess for me, I would like to be able to lead the staff in updating, revising, clearing this up, clearing some of this up, bring it to you for your that's what I thought I was gonna do, is like bring it to you all to get your blessing. Same process, right? But us digging into this, all of the little bits and pieces of this in a board meeting, to me is like below, or even in this meeting, is a little bit below the bar. Like, it's like getting you all into the weeds. And this is what my team should be doing, and we should be bringing it to you.
It does that before the committee.
Right. Yeah. So what you just said is conceptually what I think is right. I guess what I'm experiencing is a little bit different.
Okay, yes. We don't have this written down. It was part of the board culture. We probably should write it down. Nothing goes to a board committee that doesn't have the full blessing and collaboration with the superintendent. When the committee agenda comes forward from David and he says, hey, it's time for us to have board accountability committee meeting. Here is the agenda. Are you okay with it? It has already been okayed by the superintendent.
Yeah. Okay.
The question for me is, do you have anything else that you think ought to be on here as a board member? Is there anything else we haven't touched upon? Are there action items for the remaining meeting? But I'm not leading that process. I am convening the meeting with
feedback.
Yes, based on what has been approved from the superintendent.
I got it.
I'm sitting here like processing this conversation and thinking back to the last 11 years and putting it in why, how, and what context. The board has met several times in retreats and informals, et cetera, to decide the why and the what, the metrics. And there have been lots of debates about what the metrics should be. And then we've said to the superintendent, here's the why, here's what we think the metrics are, you fill in the how. And then we work collaboratively on finalizing the metrics. So this document is an amalgamation of board saying why, superintendent saying how, and then group discussion on the metrics, and it's all rolled into one. So looking at it all into one, the board didn't draft the whole thing. It was a collaborative document, and that's how we got where we are now. And when we've had discussions, at the committee level, that's where the weeds really get into. But at the board level, when we talk about adopting it, there might be the why is settled already, because we do this planning process, so the why is already baked in, and there might be some conversation on 2 or 3 of the what, the metrics, the big picture metric, but not the weeds, and we never talk about the how.
The strategy. So what you all are explaining to me is exactly the way I understand it. We are aligned in that way. The big question I guess I have, if you'll go back to whatever those things are that are across the top of the plan, those 4 things.
Goals.
Are those the goals?
Yes.
Those 4 things across the top?
Yes.
I struggle to see how that's a goal.
That's 4 categories.
Yeah.
Those are categories of many goals.
It's levers, I guess they're levers. Are those the 4 levers that you all think will get us to our mission and vision and why? So the theory of action would be, if we ensure student success around achievement, if we engage families, if we recruit and retain talent, and if we have fiscal responsibility, if y'all agree those are the things, and I'm thinking generally they are, right, the things. I feel like I can take it from there.
Those are
Those are
guiding
categories.
principles, aren't those?
The guiding principles on the slide before.
Yeah.
Go back one
If you
more.
go back to your goals on your best,
Yeah.
that's
See what I'm
the priority,
saying? We
those
don't
are our
even know what
priority
they are.
Dr. Watson, a lot of superintendents are not used to
Yes.
boards having committees. I heard that quite a bit over the last few years, that we're kind of unique with that. In a way, I felt board committees were very good because it helped to make sure that all board members are informed about what we're trying to do moving forward. But it is a mechanism that is unique to us. So I guess what I'm saying is, are you suggesting that we are too much into the operational side of things with this? Is that your?
I like the committees because they do give a chance for us to get feedback on things before we take them to the bigger group. I like the committees also because for me there's like, it's a first at bat at something before before you know it goes from ideation maybe to final. But what I don't like about the committees is it's uneven. So there's only going to be 3 or 4, maybe 5 of you all in the committee. So that means I'm missing a whole nother group, and I have to figure out how to get the other people that didn't hear it and have input on it, the same level of input. So I like it, but then, you know, it creates unevenness. And we end up having to do these things several times so that everybody gets the same bite, gets a bite at the apple. Maybe not like Hoskins Brown on this topic, she's getting several bites of the apple. But
Like you did the
Michael
academic,
Johnson may only get a single bite.
The Academic Excellence Committee, moving that from that committee format to informal, where everybody has to hear and does hear the same thing. That is an example.
That's another bite of the apple.
Yeah.
I would love that. Thank you. I would love that because everybody doesn't read this document in October. It comes and we vote on it, but conversations over the course of the year and conversations like this reveal that everybody is not fully focusing on the document when it comes out for review. And there's not, I don't see the demonstration of the same level of interest. Like there's some committees that everybody goes to that committee meeting. There's some committees that only the committee members go to that meeting. And this is one of the committees that you just don't get a lot of attendance. So while it's open and everybody could come, people don't come. Now, it may be because people are trying to be efficient with their time and they know they're going to get it in the fall. Like they don't have to go to when the sausage is being made, the sausage is being served in October. And I'll process it when I get it in October. That may be one point of view. Or, you know, I don't know what the other things are, but if it did go into an informal meeting type thing, we probably would still bump into not having enough time in that session. But I think that I certainly would be open to ways to get more feedback sooner, more participation maybe in the way that board members want to participate.
But it will be the same for any topic. So when we do committee meeting on capital improvement, there'll be people who get many bites of the apple because of, by virtue of the fact that they're on the committee, so they're going to have more understanding, more opportunities for feedback. And then for everybody else, we've got to figure out how to layer it in. So it's not just this, it's all the things.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it presents a challenge, but it's not something we can't figure out.
So.
You had Sean.
Sean, I'm sorry.
I like my sausage in the fall. So I'm going to say this about other organizations I was in 10 years ago, okay? I'd go to board meetings And even at the board meeting, people weren't prepared. They hadn't read stuff that was distributed through the agenda, okay? So we can create opportunities for participation, we can provide knowledge, we can't make people read and be prepared and think about it. All we can do is provide opportunity. So I like our committee structure because committees don't vote on anything. They don't make decisions, but it's an opportunity to vet things and put thought into them over many, many weeks and months and conversations.
Yes.
And if we start having those conversations for the first time at a board meeting, that's
Too
scary.
much, right.
And it's going to be 8 hours, then we take our first break. Then it's 7 hours, you know what I'm saying?
So can I ask yes, I agree, and that's why I said I like that aspect of the committee because it does provide opportunity for guidance, input before.
The final point I was gonna make was there's a balance the superintendent has to have between making sure everyone has an opportunity to get information and provide feedback. But then I don't feel like you have an obligation to chase down all 9 of us to get an opinion if you've been asking us 37 times over a 6-week period and some of us don't respond. There's a balance there. That's all. That's kind of what I'm saying.
So what is the sausage making in October? What is this October date? Because I don't know what that is.
So the board accountability, David's team presents all the recommendations to the DAS Remy, to the board accountability committee by the fall, in collaboration with the superintendent. So at the end of the year, we have all of our data from that year. We have the key performance indicators that we've looked at. So it's a retrospective of the year. The superintendent and the cabinet and data and accountability sit down and look at what are the recommendations for revisions to the DAS Remy for the fall. Once they work all that out at the operational level with the superintendent, it comes to the accountability committee to review and talk about. So we talk about it like summer to fall, maybe like May, June.
July and August are reserved specifically for the strategic plan that DAS Remy reviews.
I know,
And then in October, it goes before the whole board.
Right.
Okay, so you know that timeline I'm gonna ask be revised because I'm not gonna be ready in October.
Well, at our
to
board
talk about
accountability
that.
meeting, we talked about doing that in November.
Okay.
Yeah, so normally it's October. This year it's pushed forward to November to provide that time, but I'm open to it,
I'm trying to figure out how the listening and learning and the audits and all of that get included in how we might be revising our strategic plan. And if you do it in October and November, there's not gonna be an opportunity for me to give recommendations.
So I would say
I'm not
revise,
gonna know anything to give a recommendation
I would say
on.
revise it.
Yeah, guys, I'm gonna suggest that be parking lot. And if Dr. Watts, if you can get with that committee and you guys can come back, because I think we're getting a little bit off subject here. And one of the things that one suggestion, and I guess one reaction to suggestion earlier was that we let Dr. Watts and staff work on all of these things that we've asked about on the strategic plan, and they can bring it back to us at another time because it is now 11:31.
Can I make a quick comment going back up and not in you before we get off this?
As long as it's going up.
It is going up.
Okay.
So I think an example of opportunities to look at in our strategic plan, one of the things that we talked about at board accountability meeting in July was how do individual school improvement plans fit into our overall strategic plan.
Okay.
So that was an example of how does the district be down, how does the speed up within the framework of our strategic plan. And looking at goal 3 of recruitment, selection, retention, and talent, we have the teacher burnout report that we got last spring that's not currently reflecting ours. So I think that's where this discussion was supposed to go, where those, and we kind of went straight to to this, but so I just wanted to make that into the committees. I agree with Mr. Catchmark. It's incumbent upon us as board members to attend the meetings we can, and the ones that we can't, we need more information. We always have recordings, we have minutes, so just wanted to.
If we could just, I don't have any attachment to this year's calendar for when the dash limit comes forward, so I really want the superintendent to look at the actions that need to be done for her administration, come up with a timeline that makes sense, that you think will generate the best product, and then tell us, because we get guidance from board accountability. We don't supervise the district through committees. We get information and provide support. So whatever you get with your team to decide needs to be the new calendar, that's what the new calendar is, and then you let us know when the committee accommodates and supports that.
Got it.
Second.
Okay, so let me just do a little process check, because I have heard y'all seem like you're in agreement. You've hit these big themes. There's some work that needs to be done outside of this meeting. Dr. Watts is going to take the lead on some of that. There's still, we captured the pieces around, kind of the disconnects and how you package it in a way that people can really understand. Is everybody okay with tabling this now?
Yes.
Because I think that was really important conversation from a context perspective, that y'all did have that before we closed it out.
I just wanted to, because words have meaning and we've said support a lot, supporting the document, but also the document will tell us how to support it through the budget.
Right.
And if that line is drawn even more boldly, I think our discussions come whenever we decide that we're going to start presenting our budget will be easier, more informed. Yeah.
It will become the thing that you guys do your work, right?
The one thing we have not beaten to death over the last 5 years is the connection between this and the budget. There is no alignment. We never see a document correlating with that. We get a one-pager that says, here are the changes from the state, and the last retreat, the board was really psyched on this, and here's what we can invest in. And
Right.
it's a
And that's what I
document.
was looking for.
Right, and it's a document with no context.
Right.
So here's baseline, we get no context. So that's the biggest component that we have to fix.
Right.
But you led an initiative on that, you and Julie. We formed an informal committee to review the budget 1 year, many years ago. And the inspiration was trying to generate a full budget that connected to everything, a full budget of everything that's funded, and then what connected to the strategic plan and everything we said was a priority. It was a big monstrous list that I think was a little difficult to digest. We enjoyed it because, that's where our head was. From that point on, we moved to a summary of changes only. Not full budget.
Back to the budget.
Yeah, and
Well, then different leadership came in, different committee structure, and you're running uphill on a slippery slope. So.
yeah.
We're getting out of your.
But
Yeah.
There have been attempts, and there is an affinity to want to look at full budget, full strategy. We just got away from it, and I think maybe, and it wasn't just a change in the administration, I don't think, because that administration stayed for a little while after we took that approach. But I think we got stimulated to form the budget committee, and we thought that work would happen in the budget committee.
And that's what I was referring to, not administration,
Okay.
but the way the board structured that process changed.
Yeah, so all of those pieces are available for you to consume to figure out how you want to line those things up, because we've done a number of them. And I think that Mr. Johnson or Mr. Cashmar can give you maybe some back timeline on, we did this, we did that. This is how it worked out, this wasn't so great or whatever, to allow you to figure out how you want those to happen. Because we have been doing the shortcut, the Cliff Notes version, but we don't have to.
And I don't think we want to.
I don't think we really like it. We're not saying
No.
that we like it.
Okay,
So-
I got it.
So, may I suggest we break for lunch?
Yes.
Looks like it is ready.
David's favorite part.
How long are we doing for lunch?
Half hour,
10 minutes,
half hour.
15 minutes.
Did you say 2 hours?
Half hour? Okay, 30 minute lunch, and then we are moving to facilities.
Hallelujah.
Topic on the agenda will be the long-range facilities plan. It will be led by the Vanessa Milliken.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to come back before you and bring you kind of up to date where we are in some of our work, because it's a continuous process. We had a presentation earlier this year from our consultant with Parsons and MQT with our facilities position assessment, with the position of our schools, where we are, right size in our buildings, overutilization, underutilization, deferred maintenance plan, what I think should be as a part of the process. So I have with me Cindy Redford, she's a part of the Parliament group, and that win is in the back, and so is Cindy Barker, so they're part of the team that's with us today. So the plan is to kind of take you through some of our additional work since we had an opportunity to be together. And I understand that we'll kind of do the introduction and then there'll be another component where you all will actually be visioning, providing some guiding principles for staff to go back and continue our work. What you see today is how we have prioritized some of our work, what we're looking at in regards to what our roles and responsibilities are, is working to forecast those changes as it relates to student enrollment, making sure that those buildings are right-sized and conducive to learning. Kind of prioritizing some of those categories. With it, for us, a limited availability of land could restrict us as we're looking for new schools, renovated schools in Savannah, Chatham County, just based on the growth in Savannah, Chatham County. So that is certainly one of the priorities for us in our work. Okay, thank you, Dave. So those growth areas and that local circumstances certainly should be something for us to consider as we talk about right sizing. And we continue to see how we can prioritize our work. The deferred maintenance budget is certainly something we need to pay attention to once we reach that life cycle, the end of the life cycle on some of those buildings. As long as we keep them in circulation, there's an additional cost that we are incurring. So not only is the safety relative to our students and staff, but certainly the cost to maintain is difficult to find those parts for those outdated systems, and we still have some schools in circulation approaching the age of 60 years plus. So when we've gone in and made repairs, replaced HVAC systems, we continue to find ourselves patching those systems up. So that's some of the top priorities, is making sure that they're efficient and that they're safe for our students and staff.
So Vanessa, just one more time so I can get clarity, what category is that?
The one that we just talked about?
Yep.
Right here is what we're looking at is what would be the things that we would look at from facilities, how we would and why we categorize them. You can see these, you go across these traits. So why would I rank land and limited availability? Because if you pay any attention to the growth in Western Chatham County, and that is where we're growing. Only way someone disagrees that you've not been on Western Chatham County and you've not seen any of the warehouses wherever you go, and I get that. That's dollars and cents. Every time one of those warehouses go up, that equals dollars and cents, and someone's being aggressive and grabbing every piece of land there is, and when you go back the next week, there's another warehouse. So there is a limit availability. And we'll show you some of those statistics and information that we received from the realtor that we're working with. That growth area that we are experiencing and being able to continue to work to reduce, we should be planning how we're going to prevent overcrowding. If we have a building that's about to come online, we know what the current capacity is, the current utilization over the last 5 years. Why not make plans now in advance as to how we're going to populate that school? Do we look at the current configuration, the current lines, where the students are coming from? That needs to be done before we actually get them in there versus waiting to get them and then having to back them out of the building. So forward thinking in regards to planning and right sizing buildings. The end of the building cycle, maintaining those buildings is something that we need to make sure that we are prioritizing as well. Then you're gonna see me go over here to another set of priorities, so if we can continue down, Dave. For us, deferred maintenance is certainly an area that we focus in on, especially this time of year. Second year in a row for us. Triple digit temperatures. What happened? HVAC system. COVID was not a friend to us in HVAC system. Why? We put HEPA filters in. So what happened? This happened. You got a powerful filter and a system that's already struggling. And the two didn't match. We spent more time last year on putting portable AC units just to be able to keep the students and the staff conditioned in those buildings. So we have to look at our deferred maintenance budget, how we're going to manage those buildings when they get to the end of that life cycle. And we've done a good job with our East Cross dollars. We have replaced over 50% of our buildings, but we still have buildings that are rapidly approaching the end of the life cycle. So those are the kind of things that we looked at from an operation standpoint, adequate space, deferred maintenance, availability of land, and being able to work collaboratively with our academic team, with technology, with finance, with HR. Now tell us what your needs are. Not just from a building standpoint, but from an academic standpoint, finance, IT is continuing to grow. Their needs are growing. They are spread out across the district. So how do we make them more efficient? How do they give us the information that we need? So we talk about Western Chatham County, we talk about facilities condition assessment, we talk about underutilization, we talk about overutilization. Now let's talk about what those administrative needs are. We have several categories that we're taking into consideration. What are the needs that we need to focus and continue our deep data dive in? Administrative action is required. Number one, Coastal Empire Montessori Charter School. The school has to be relocated. Their programs into a new location. The charter school has successfully petitioned for a school site. We know what their programming needs are. Their current enrollment is 220 with a goal to be able to go up to 400 students, K through 5. So what our responsibility is to make sure that we can identify within our inventory a building to be able to support that particular administrative requirement. This is their current location. We've looked at where they're currently located in a cluster of modular classrooms. That's their current address. Their needs are to expand to accommodate and have a full suite of academic and common areas to include classrooms, outdoor space, gym, cafeteria, office, and conference. So this is the work that we have assigned to this particular requirement. It is an administrative requirement, one that we're continuing to work on. Recently brought to our attention is our Georgia Network of Educational and Therapeutic Support, better known as GNET. As a part of Jenkins High School construction, we added a specific wing that's designed specifically for our students in the GNET program to accommodate a minimum of 100 students. Most recently, we were informed through our academic team that now the Department of Justice is requiring us to mainstream all of the students in the GNET program. So that is another one of our administrative requirements. You see that one listed as 2A, which means that that is a priority for us to continue our work to determine where we're going to relocate those students in a timely manner. So those that have those time-sensitive requirements, you will see those rank highest on our work matrix. We'll continue doing our data research. September, October may not require any construction based on the number of students that we have remaining in Coastal Georgia Comprehensive Academy. Will they be able to go into Jenkins? But again, we're going to continue to do our due diligence.
Ms. Miller-Kegler, can I ask just a clarifying question around that? So does this mean, kind of in layman's terms, we have it now at the high school level, so you're going to be looking for opportunities at the elementary and middle school levels?
That building, that particular wing was designed for K through 12.
It's just in
Yeah,
Jenkins?
it is a totally different wing,
Okay.
but it's on the Jenkins High School campus.
So are you going to be looking for additional facilities for another school that meets these needs that's co-located with another school? I'm just trying to understand what this all means.
The goal is that it was designed and built for at least 100 students. There are not 100 students in the Jenkins suite right now.
Okay.
So it could be a combination. We can take the students, relocate them there, based on the number. I think we thought it was 30 something, it may be more than that. Then, if that's the case, because most schools are designed and built now for that capacity. If you go into Beach High School, you'll be able to see where their suites for our GNET students.
Okay.
So based on what their enrollment and capacity is, we'll work with that particular team and determine what's the right fit for what this facility, because some of them are specialized programs.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Is that correct, Ms. Ball?
Yes, we're already starting the relocation process because some can go into other schools, much like we do. They want satellite programs.
Okay.
And what is the deadline the state has given us?
So the state actually will provide their guidance according to what they say, Brian, jump in October, but they've already let us know that we have to look at reconfiguring how we're doing business because of the Department of Justice and the lawsuit and getting out of this business. So we're looking for a deadline. I want to say it's the end of next year because we just got something recently that says they're already looking at how to do the FTE so that we can capture that FTE. So I'm gonna let Brian add a little bit more context.
So to make a long story short, we're not waiting until we get it next year, because we have to work now to be able to be prepared to receive them. So if I did the notice in February, March, and I have to have them out in June or July, I'm behind the 8 ball. So as soon as it was brought to our attention, we've walked Jenkins again, we looked at what some of our other facilities can also host. So that's why you see it as a high priority.
Yeah, clarity, just so you understand where we stand. We're a single county GNETS. That is strange. GNETS was designed to have several counties be able to get resources together and meet the needs of students that they could have a hard time meeting on their own. Well, we don't have Effingham County with us anymore, so now we're simply a single county GNETS. And yeah, there's a lawsuit going on. We don't know where that lawsuit's going to go. But basically, the state is saying, we don't really know why you would want to be continuing on as a GNETS program, given that you're a single county and you can serve these students at different schools, but not specifically through GNETS. So right now, we're waiting for the funding. The last year's kind of when they got the signal that the funding's going to change. The state recognizes that they need to make adjustments with the funding so that districts can serve these students and not rely on being part of GNETS to access that funding. So that's where things are. It is important to get moving towards the new solution. And you saw in your building plan about the condition of that particular facility before it was listed on whatever list of schools. So it's important to, if you've been to Jenkins, it's a really wonderful wing. It's a gorgeous facility. So anyway, yeah, sorry about that, Vanessa.
Just logistical. Would you mind widening the screen so that H is the furthest extent to the right, and just making it bigger for our old eyes?
Yeah, we'll do our best.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Well, okay. Oh, okay.
And that will kind of be our focus area here if we need to go over, then we'll bring it over.
Thank you.
But this is kind of, you see, when we're drawing things on the wall and looking at dots also, we kind of update this as we go along. And again, like I said, we submitted as soon as it was brought to our attention. Like all of those other administrative requirements, we'll go ahead and we'll add them to our list and go down. We'll talk a little bit about the central office. That building is over 100 years old. That is where our administrative staff function and operate. That certainly requires some attention. We're in the process of developing a request for proposals, looking at an option and opportunity for a P3, which is a public-private partnership, where a possible investors can come in, take a look at the building. We own the land, we own the building. So we're bringing something to the table. So if there's an opportunity, an option to partner with someone, maintaining a presence in that building, parking is certainly a challenge, but looking at possibly a private partnership. But we'll be going to the marketplace to see what's available and what those options are in regards to a public-private partnership for a request for proposal on that particular initiative. So that's another one of our administrative requirements that we're going through. When we start looking at buildings, looking at that, those FCI, with the conditions of those buildings, and these are just clearly, as you see them in descriptions, these are not recommendations, these are not recommendations, these are not recommendations. These are just simply our work as an operations department. What can we do with this land? We've been talking a lot about where do we have acreage, where do we have space. Guess what? We're doing the exact same thing that you've been asking about. Where are there some opportunities, just like we took advantage of the amount of acreage that we had at the Martin campus. If you go back and you look at what happened in that first year of E3, revenues were down significantly. So that's how we made the decision to construct those 3 schools on one site and not have to pause or not provide one of those schools with a new building. So we're doing our due diligence. We're looking at where is there some opportunity, where do we have land. Unfortunately, a lot of the land that we have surveyed and looked at our records in Western Chatham County, you see that they have wetlands. West Chatham would be an awesome opportunity based on the amount of land that we have between West Chatham Elementary and West Chatham Middle. But guess what? All that land that you see sitting there,
Swamp.
as Mr. Dr. Brigham said, it's swamp, it's wetlands. So we can't build there. So that doesn't get us what we wanted to be able to consider if we went out on that side of town, but we're looking at available acreage here as a potential opportunity. Whitney.
Ms. Miller-Kegler, before you move forward on the wetlands issue, is it that, and I am pro-wetland, but is it that the cost of mitigating what we could build on is prohibitive? Because you can build on wetlands.
You can build on wetlands and you get wetlands credits too in your bank for my technical folks. But we have to apply, we have to go to the Corps of Engineers. We've done that before. But there is a long process and there is a cost associated with that, and they would have to approve it as a Corps of Engineers. So it's not like we've not done that before. We have with Pulaski being on a military installation. We had to work with them. We had to make sure that the Corps of Engineers was a part of that process too, even as we started the addition to the school. We had to make sure that we were not impacted any of the wetlands that were around there. But you're absolutely correct.
And we did it behind Beach.
We did it behind Beach.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we did, because that we were going back the way that we repositioned the school, and we did have to do some wetland credits there.
Okay, thank you.
So we do take that into consideration and look at what's available for us in regards to that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Ms.
So,
Kegler,
yes.
I'd just like to mention that 20 years ago, we built Hilton Head Mill on wetlands. We had so many teachers get sick because of mold and that kind of thing, and it ended up with a lawsuit and all. So where I see there, we can mitigate things. It's certainly not something to jump into if it can be avoided.
Right, and then what we'll talk a little bit about, and I'm gonna let, and that, Simi, is that we have those Georgia DOE requirements that we have to meet. We have to do our due diligence before we can even have them consider us on that particular property. Whenever we venture down to look at land as an option, there is a litany of tests that must be conducted, and we outsource that, get those test results back, and they have to be reviewed by Georgia Department of Education, just as we did with Harge, when there's a railroad track that's behind that school, and the berm had to be so high in the depth before they would approve us building on that particular property. So all of those studies must be completed before Georgia Department of Education will allow us an opportunity to move forward. So when we start looking at those are kind of those administrative areas that we are taking into consideration. Then those student programs and requests that we receive, certainly with data and accountability, as I stated, they are all across the district. We want to be able to consolidate professional learning, records management. We are about to, we've moved out of the gym into other parts of Whitney now, so that's another area that we must focus in on. CELA, which actually ended up being an awesome idea for us during the pandemic, and we continue to operate CELA. So, but CELA is living in space with capital projects, building bridges, athletics, and everybody else that we can get into that facility. So they certainly need a home for virtual instruction, and what we currently have is insufficient. So that is what we're looking at, is how do we manage that, moving them out of Hopkins Swing site, building Bridges Academy, how we look at improving the HVAC system where they currently are. One of our successful programs are our little Acorn preschool program. How do we build on that? How do we help and assist academics with that 3-year-old program by looking at where we could potentially have capacity and providing them with that information as well. Again, our WINGS program, our successful athletics program, how do we make sure that we're outfitting them and giving them everything? Some of these we're not gonna meet, because I think somebody said that they wanted a graduation ceremony venue, so I'm not sure how. There are a lot of things that we can make happen, but I don't know if I'll be able to build an arena for graduation.
Vanessa, so you don't
I
have
get
to.
a lot of challenges.
Yes, so you don't have to go through each one of those. Let me zoom us up for just a minute.
Okay, if you all want to just
Yes,
go through
we
and then
can,
you
I
all
can,
go.
I can actually send this out in the update that you all will get tonight, at some point. But to zoom us up a little bit, I have asked Vanessa and her team to prioritize all of these things based on the data that we have. So we have growth data, we have building utilization data, we have the health of the building data, and a lot of different things that we can consider. We will prioritize those into what are the things that we feel like are the most urgent things to attack versus the things that are least urgent to attack or move forward with, and bring that to you guys in a recommendation in February. You can receive the recommendation based on the data, or you can modify the recommendation based on the data. But the point is, I've asked her team to look at the data to give you a prioritized list. The other thing that I have to say is that there are some things, regardless of the data, that we just have to do. GNET and Simcoe have to be done. They need to be done as soon as possible. So we will do those things. We have to honor our commitments and move forward with those things. What we really need from this team to do today, from you all, the feedback we need from you all is, we have the data, but you may have some ideals, some guiding principles that you want us to consider as we make these decisions. I'll just give you an example of one. Redrawing attendance lines. Very controversial thing. You may say, we don't want to tackle that in the next 2 to 3 years. So as Vanessa's team is looking at the data, if you all say to us, we don't want to look at attendance lines, If anything pops up on the list that would require us to look at attendance lines, then that all of a sudden gets deprioritized because you all have given us guidance that that is something that maybe you're not willing to consider right now. So we want you to think about what are some of the ideals, and I think Denise is going to help guide us through this discussion that we can lay on top of very objective data, which will spit out a list of what we should attack first, but it doesn't take into account what you all, some other things that you all might be thinking or considering. Does that make sense?
So one thing before we go on, yes, without a lot of information, but anyway, Mr. Cashmore.
Okay.
Oh, we're gonna discuss the.
Yeah, so-
But that was what we can't.
The superintendent and her team are working on, and Ms. Miller-Taylor are working on a long-range plan, but there's some things that we have to keep the ball moving forward on, in terms of gathering data, refining ideas. So she mentioned, we're putting the RFP out, to see what proposals we might get back on 208, for example. Not committing to anything, but just getting input so that we have better data to make decisions down the road when the recommendations come. And she also mentioned land or opportunities in West Chatham. We may have to act more quickly than February of next year or middle of next year to the extent good opportunities come up. So I think we're still gathering information, gathering that data as we're doing the long-range planning. One of the other things that has come up, and I emailed the entire board about this, was a developer and some local architects reached out to me as chair of CIC, Roger as board president, and Ms. Hall as the district rep for the area with a novel public-private partnership proposal where the district might supply some excess land. The developer, an architect, well, the developer would wanted to put up some housing, apartment complexes, and a portion of them would be dedicated to district staff at below market rates, which would be something that we could offer our staff as a non-wage kind of incentive and retention and recruitment tool. That's the idea. The devil is obviously in the details. Legal has to review and vet it. Our facilities group has to get in the weeds and see how is it going to impact that particular site. And we're not going to mention the site now because this concept has come up before in discussions about how to recruit and retain. But the general concept, if the board is okay with the general concept, we're not approving any projects, we're not budgeting, allocating any funds. But if the board is okay with just pursuing that concept and wanting to learn more and only making a decision once we actually have real data, we kind of want to know that now so we can engage the proper departments within the district to kind of dive down and explore the concept. But if there isn't broad board support for at least looking at it, we don't want to waste our time, the district staff's time, or the members of the public who approached us with this concept. So I think Roger and the superintendent just wanted me to mention it as one of the, even though we're doing long-term planning and there'll be a holistic long-term approach, this is one of those things where we need to keep the discussion moving forward to get to a point where there is a proposal that we can then consider and debate and decide if we want to do it. Is that a good summary?
Yes.
So I think it's an interesting prospect. I think the quantity and the duration of the benefit of that public-private partnership needs to exceed the value of the contribution now and at the anticipated termination of the relationship. So whatever that, if the relationship is after 20 years, this number of units is going to be available for staff, then I would want to see the value of that contribution by us now and then also the projected value later on, when the relationship would terminate, or maybe it would not terminate, maybe it would be indefinite.
Okay, so I think what Sean is asking though now is if we want to continue to talk. Yes,
If I will continue to talk about it with that information. So,
But that's
yes,
the devil in
if-
the detail.
That's the devil in the detail.
Y'all asked, you said you wanted to know whether we were interested. I'm telling you the
So you don't want to talk
criteria.
about it until we get that.
I'm saying the criteria for my interest is going to be based on that value.
Okay.
And this
So-
is informed partly by my experience with the public-private partnership that I observed with University Village.
I think that's a part of the exploration, because that's what we would, we can't find the answer to that until we explore.
Right.
So the exploration of that will give you the answer that you need
Yeah.
to make a decision.
Yeah.
Because
I
I
would
just
like
want to
to
learn
add
more,
that-
and once we learn more, we
Yes.
can make a definitive
We
decision.
just want to know if you all approve of us exploring it so that we can answer some of the questions that you're raising right now. If you don't want us to explore it, we can't teach you more. We can't answer those questions.
So I think this could be a really good segue into
Yes.
our guiding principles, if we can kind of jump there, because I think this is an example of where if our guiding principles are, we as a district solely, are the sole owners, operators, and, and parties of all of our facilities, then we don't even explore public-private partnerships.
Right. If that's a guiding
But we're,
principle.
if that's a guiding principle, but we're talking about a couple of scenarios where we are opening the door to exploring public-private partnerships, which I think is great. I mean, I think that's, but we haven't had that conversation as a board, and so I think that's what we want to take the opportunity to do with this conversation about guiding principles. And again, the guiding principles are, the superintendent's talked about literacy as our North Star. So when we're looking at our facilities, what is our North Star that we are looking towards as we're making decisions? And that's really what we're hoping to define through these guiding principles.
I didn't understand what you just said. You said you made an if-then statement. You said if such and such and such is our guiding principle, then we wouldn't do public-private partnerships. Say that again. What did you say that if then?
That if our guiding principle was, we as a district are the sole operators and partners with all of our facilities, then we would not explore public-private.
Right. That guiding principle would say, if anything like this came across my desk, the answer would have to be no. Because your guiding principle would be, she's saying, if you gave us a guiding principle that said only the district operates a building.
Yeah, but that's not our
No,
current.
she just thought
No,
If we generate that, I don't think that's gonna be it. That's
No,
gonna
I'm
be-
saying that's not even true now, is it?
No, we don't know because there are no guiding principles right now.
No,
so-
I'm saying that in fact, that is not true completely in fact, is it?
What's not true?
That we don't cooperate or anything?
It's not.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Okay.
We already had, it was an example.
Okay,
let's
let's
play an example.
Okay, yeah.
You turn that into a positive statement.
Right, so for example, we have facilities right now that we cooperate with the City of Savannah, where we have Windsor Forest Elementary School and a community center right next to it. From my understanding and from what I've seen, having experience being at the campus, it works pretty well. It may not be perfect, but it's an example of where we are co-sharing a facility with another entity. And sorry, I'm not trying to exclude.
Yeah, that's why I was like,
I'm not
yeah,
trying to exclude
I didn't
anyone.
understand. Okay, got it.
Holy cow. So back up to big picture. If our guiding principle says we are open to collaboration in the best interest of the district,
And when things come across
and when
my
things
desk-
come across our desk, or it gives our team the latitude to be able to be like, hey, we're going to innovate, and we see this opportunity to partner with a senior housing project, co-locate our pre-K there, and get some benefit out of it. I think there are endless opportunities, but what the staff needs is guidance from us as the policymakers on what those parameters are when we look towards exploration. And I think we have the opportunity to do here is We are very data-driven, as we should be. Are there other parameters, are there other data sets that we need to incorporate? Are there other, maybe things that are less tangible that we need to be considering? So what are those other things that we should be using to inform our decisions around not only our current facilities, but also our current properties, which might be underutilized, and as we're looking to potentially acquire new property for future facilities?
That's helpful. That's why I asked that question, because
Yeah.
my thought was that a guiding principle for me is long-term stewardship, long-term asset management, which for me is 50 years. 50 years will the district still maintain tangible value, money, asset value for the next several generations of students and staff. Like, I don't want to make decisions now on real estate that puts some private entity in a better position in terms of asset and resources than the district, because the tax dollars and the citizens of the district deserve the value of that asset. As far as I'm concerned, I'd rather see that value retained by the district than give it to someone else for some temporary benefit, which might be gained temporary for them, maybe 10 years.
So
20
that's-
years.
so that's
My guiding principle is, how do I maintain the greatest value asset for the district for the longest period of time?
That's a guiding principle.
That's a guiding principle.
So are we creating guiding principles today?
So yes, so what Sharon and I have suggested or have discussed, and again, if y'all rather do it, is for the sake of time and efficiency, breaking up into our small groups again, and each group coming up with ideally 3, so that we can, because we can't have 20 guiding principles, or else they're going to conflict and not really provide a lot of guidance. So what we like to do is get down to 3, if we can, from each group, and then come back and discuss those. And as we're going through the exercise, would encourage everyone to think through, so we each have a different perspective, depending on the lens in which we are doing something. So if I'm having, a conversation with, if I'm having a conversation with a person, am I talking to them as their representative on the board? Am I talking to them as their neighbor? Am I talking to them as their friend? And that might influence the way in which that conversation happens. It doesn't change who I am as a person, but as we're going through this, would encourage you to think about what you would be looking for if you were a student, if you were a parent, if you were a teacher, or if you were an administrator. And rather than saying, Michael, you're going to be the parent, Sean, you're going to be the student, each group has the opportunity to really look through each of those lenses as you're going through the discussion. Does that make sense? Connie, you have a look on your
Oh,
face.
yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I want all the progressives to come over with me.
This is not the school board draft, it's not a draft.
All the
So
But
I
when
think,
it comes to this
that
stuff,
it
what does
makes sense
progressive
to
mean?
include the cabinet in this conversation as well. So we can do our 1, 2, 3 count off, if we can do that. Who's at the end?
Or they can just go, you can go back to the poster where you were at and just add a sheet of
But I
paper.
don't know, do we want 10
No, I
groups?
don't want to work. We're on 10.
Oh. Let's do 7. Let's do 6 groups this time.
6 groups?
Number off 1 to 6.
Okay.
1, here we go.
2,
3.
Lee?
you 4.
5, 6.
1, 2,
2. Count.
2,
No,
2
he's
is Paul in the back.
3.
4.
5.
6.
No. Oh, yeah.
1, 2.
3.
4.
Okay. All the ones at the front.
All right, I'm a 6.
What am I?
You are set.
What are you writing?
Don't bringing that into my...
When we closed Fort Wentworth, the parents were informed during the spring of the year. And you know how some parents were upset with it. So what we're saying now is that anytime there's a decision to be made regarding closing a facility, or opening a facility, or a programmatic, adding programs to a particular facility, for example, building bridges, it must be presented to the board by November as opposed to waiting until the spring to bring that to the board, so that they have more time during the year to plan, to do strategic planning, and also to be able to align it with the budget.
November prior to the next.
Yes, yes.
Because you could say November, and I'd be like, okay, we can prove it and start it in January.
November for the
It would
following
give
school
us
year.
time to communicate with parents, do all the planning we need so that when kids walk through the door in that year, that upcoming year, everything's ready, the parents are aware, and all the operationalizing has been
It's a full
done.
year in advance.
Could you expound on exploring programmatic options before closure?
Right, explore programmatic options prior to building closure. A good example of that is Thunderbolt. How we utilize Thunderbolt to gain revenue with the studios and filming and et cetera. So that's something that before we close the building, explore options how that Savannah Chapman County, how we as a school district can benefit from that.
Okay? The team that was over here,
All right.
Go Grabowski.
The Davis. All right, so the first we had was all decisions are driven by academics and programming. So being very intentional to, Roger, do you have a question?
No, I was
Oh.
raising my hand for that.
Oh, sorry. So that we are very intentionally thinking about the academic programming as we're evaluating decisions, and that might include evaluation of academic data in addition to facility data, and also program offerings. And we talked about that some before in board meetings, like as we're looking at potential opportunities to repurpose the school. If we're going to repurpose the school, does it fit with the programming for that particular school? Flexibility and future focus, so thinking of ourselves as the long-term stewards. So that's in design and innovation, and also in land sales and acquisitions. So the flexibility part, like the land sales and acquisitions, working proactively with our local government partners, particularly as large projects are coming in. Are there opportunities to partner with the municipality and or developer in order to identify a potential school site and not looking only at a direct land purchase? Looking at opportunities like that, and then the design and innovation, thinking about not only how a building would be used today, but how it might also be used in the future, and are we designing those spaces to be flexible and to encourage that innovation not only in the space, but also in academics and the way in which students are learning in a more collaborative manner. And then the last one, schools as community anchors, so that could be, again, a big picture, could be the neighborhood schools that we have now, but could also be the continuation and potential growth of partnerships like we have, the one that we just mentioned with the city of Savannah, or within a couple of our elementary schools that are partnered with community centers that helps to build and reinforce the sense of our schools as a strong anchor and a civic presence that's a part of the community.
That's great.
That's ours. Questions? Miss anything?
Wonderful job, Grabowski.
okay, Ms. Brown.
We came up with 6 items. The first guiding principle is that there should be a plan. And we defined minimum components of what we thought a plan was, because we started to discuss that maybe what we've been calling a facilities plan might not actually be what everyone envisions as a plan. So a narrative, proposed actions, a yearly reevaluation of operations is something that we do. 5-year strategic review, and then something that, and so those are those main components. So not so much of a list or a slide deck, but an actual narrative plan with all of that information. And we called the plan, not unlike the other group, Future Forward Facilities Plan. We made another acronym, so it's the FFMP. The other 4 items, that it should be aligned, guiding principle. So one principle is that we ought to have a plan, a future forward facilities plan. 2, it should be aligned with academics, the strategic plan, and the budget. 3, another guiding principle is that it should accommodate long-term asset value and fiscal stewardship for the tax dollar. 4, it ought to be collaborative. 5, it should be innovative. And Sean had said, you know, we don't say no. And I said, well, I like saying no. So we compromised on always say maybe, if you don't want to not say I would say we'll always say maybe.
We already have that, that's already part of our.
And then finally, keeping a long-term view, you know, and exceedingly, you know, long-term view of the approach. And those are our 6 guiding principles.
Somebody please go.
I guess I'll go next, if I can read first. No, so we started going through everything and then we realized that our number one thing kind of came through talking through some stuff, which was form follows function, and it's kind of already been talked about a little bit, that the academic programming and delivering of that for the experience of students needs to be first and foremost when designing with facility design, and if we're going to repurpose it for something else. We talked about another principle is long-term value, that whatever the properties are and what we plan on doing with them, it needs to have an interest of the students, and we need to make sure that we're getting the value back into the district. We need another one is financial planning to maintain a position to respond to district needs, which brought us to market-informed capacity, which is basically always making sure that we have a financial capability for planning of district needs, and to make sure that we are able to move at a pace that's based on the market, whether if we're in a market like we are now, where inventory is slow, we need to have the capacity and the processes in place in order to be able to make a decision in order to, if we need to acquire property or if we're selling property. And what else was I guess? That's it. Oh, last one was it's okay. We said it's also it's okay to have short-term pain for a long-term gain for the district, whether for the asset, for the students, for the benefit of the students. I think I got everything.
Does anybody have a question about any of these, just for clarity? Because I am going to ask you to prioritize which ones should be the most important ones for me to consider as we move forward in our capital planning. So you might just want to ask a question so you know whether it's somewhere you want to put a dot or not. I would like to hear the the first one on you all is about form and function.
Form follows function.
So elaborate on that a little bit more.
It means that the form of the building has to follow the functionality of the building.
Which is academic.
Which is academics.
So rephrasing it.
It's very similar to what the Davids and
The academic aspect should be considered as a priority in the design of a building.
It should be the number one priority in the design of the building.
In all the, well, frankly, in all decisions being made,
Yes.
it goes back to the.
And renovation.
And renovation.
And renovation.
I would say programming, it's not just academics, because art,
Yeah.
music,
Yes.
athletics,
Yes.
all of that's important.
Yes.
Cafeteria?
Well, we also wrote in there the experience, the delivery of the academic experience.
Right.
Total experience.
Bingo,
Total.
exactly.
But that should drive the building, not, it'll be
Right.
cheaper if we just
Right.
put up a
Yes.
rectangular and
Yes.
cinder blocks and
That's
squeeze
exactly
everybody
it
in.
is.
Yes.
Okay.
So if anybody's curious, I did pull together some images of what some of those spaces.
By the way.
Sorry.
So let me be 100% clear with that. So what if a partner comes to us and they say, we want to partner with you all to do X, Y, and Z? Then that is then partner driven.
I think it has to.
If it's a part, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think if we're going to be involved, it can be, we can have a partner, but we have to make sure that it's always going to be to the benefit of the district.
But we
Of
have
the
that example
students.
with Savannah Classical. We would not have built Savannah Classical the way that Savannah Classical built itself, but it had partners that were willing to invest in growing that school quickly. So in any other charter school, we have not, and I think I understand this properly, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the rate of growth in grades at Savannah Classical Academy is much faster than we have approved the increase in grades at other charter schools.
That's not true.
It's not, okay, so
No.
we.
Actually,
It's the same.
no, actually, Susie King Taylor, you guys approved full middle Savannah Classical. We were doing it 1 grade at a time.
But I'm in the addition of high school.
Oh, I just, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking, and
That's what.
Huh?
So you-
Classical's on probation.
Well, still, but.
Yeah,
But
I hear you.
yeah.
Okay, I think I can still use them to illustrate my point, but I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So each school says, hey, I want to build this charter school and I want this grade range. And Susie King Taylor, we did approve to the extent of their range at a pretty decent clip. But with Savannah Classical Academy, what was unique about that school was it brought well-heeled partners in that wanted to help support the growth of that school at the rate that they wanted to go.
I understand.
And they did, and they now are full high
K-12.
school.
Right.
So we do have experience doing that. So I don't know how people reflect on that decision, but I think we have had partners who have said that they want to do something, and we have followed their vision. Dr. Watts, you asked us to think about, you said that you want us to be attentive to what is most important to us in these things. Is that going to be your DOT exercise, that when we go through and do the DOT ranking, that you're going to assign priority rank and temporal scale, like how fast you're going to do, priority and how fast you're going to do it to the DOT order, or is it just going to be priority?
Priority.
Just priority?
Not speed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I think sorry, you go, Sean.
So 2 comments on the public-private thing. It's a partnership.
Right.
So we had a local partner we were discussing doing something with years ago, and their proposal was, that sounds great, you give us the money, we're going to control the budget. And we said, no thank you, and we're not in a partnership with them.
Yeah, that's not a partnership.
No. It's, that's what we said.
Right.
We have another local partner who is a true partnership. We want this, you have this. Great, we want this, and you have this, and we came to an agreement.
Right.
So, always say maybe, we'll talk to you about it.
Sure.
But if your idea is one-sided and it doesn't benefit us and you, we're not gonna do it.
Got it.
The second thing is, one thing none of us identified, and I just wanna throw this out there because I think it's really important, to the point where we, as a board, put it in our design guidelines 5 or 6 years ago. Here is the base standard for every facility. We want all high schools to have this. We want all middle schools to have this. We want elementary schools to have this. And we put in auditorium, art room, music room, base athletic space in all the schools. And they're in our design guidelines. And operationally, sometimes it's been space contingent, sometimes it's been budget contingent. Personally, I want it to be space contingent more than budget, because we made a policy decision. We want every school at a high school, middle school, or elementary to have these base functions and opportunities. And that, it wasn't on any of this, but I think that's an important thing we all agreed on 5 or 6 years ago. I just want to throw that out there. Maybe we can add it to one of the boards.
Yeah, I asked her to add it. So that's not already written in policy somewhere, correct? That's a practice that you all assumed would be happening.
It's in our design guidelines.
But not.
We
And
don't have a policy.
Yeah.
well, the issue with, we don't want our design guidelines to say you must do this.
Right.
Because we need flexibility in space, budget, programming. A garrison needs more facilities of a certain type than a Woodville Tompkins. Well, they're not the same, but a Savannah Arts needs different types of extra than a Woodville does. We don't need a welding lab at Savannah Arts.
Right.
But so we have to take those kinds of things into account.
But like every school should have an auditorium.
Well, however, there is this distinction between an auditorium and a theater. And the distinction is this. The auditorium, the size of the stage is not the same as the size of a stage of a theater. Because a theater, you have to have a larger backstage, you have to have a fly system. There is a difference.
And that's why I'm saying we should have a base.
Yeah,
Right,
so
every
the
school should have at
baseline is
least
the
an auditorium.
That's it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that was my point.
A gym is the base.
Yes.
You might have a gym and a multipurpose room. You may
Yeah.
have a gym that has an auditorium in it.
Right.
But
A
it,
cafetorium.
cafetorium, but it has to have certain components.
And I just want to say, that's true because Tompkins High School, then later Woodville Tompkins, has never had an auditorium. Every high school had one except for Tompkins. Now we finally have an auditorium. And through the space, they was able to convert it to, add a gym. So that's good,
But let me-
basics.
But here's why this frustrates me. Here's what's happened over the years. We added a new gym at Islands and converted the old gym to an auditorium. That was gonna be the plan at several high schools. But then, instead of doing that at Beach, we had a multi-purpose room, and then later in another East Boston, then we added an auditorium. At Windsor Forest, we built a new gym, we had an old gym, we were gonna convert it to an auditorium, but then there was a localized push to make that a career and technical room instead. So there wasn't an auditorium there. They were kind of one-off decisions. I think we should have a base. We agree as a policy matter of the board, all high schools should start at this base. And then if there's, add-ons because of a specific programming need,
Then you add on.
then we add on. But we should decide as a board, what do we want our policy to be? Do we want to have every school start at a base with these functions or not?
Yeah, well, I think with the auditoriums, one of the things that we did with the multipurpose rooms is we didn't do any renovation. So the reason that the reason that the multipurpose room at Beach failed to become an auditorium is because we didn't do anything with it structurally or acoustically to make it auditorium. So it was very, very difficult to use. I don't know what happened at the other one, but it doesn't become an auditorium because we call it an auditorium. It becomes an auditorium because it's functional to do so.
Designed and used as.
It was
Right.
made to be a multi-purpose room for the ROTC program, and it was not converted with a stage and seats and all that.
Nothing was done to the multipurpose room. So that's why I'm using this example. It wasn't converted to a multipurpose room structurally. We just stopped calling it a gym and started calling it a multipurpose room, which is very different from putting in a stage, putting in some acoustic tiles, and I think the community over there is very happy with what they ended up with. It requires some extra East Boston dollars, but the reason I started with this comment was to say that there could possibly be some renovation guidelines. If you are gonna repurpose something and say it's gonna become this thing, then just put some level of minimum investment that will let it become this thing. So somebody's not calling an auditorium a theater.
Right.
When okay, it doesn't have to be a theater. Like, there's a definition to what that item is. And if it doesn't meet our definition, then it's not that thing.
Well, and I think that's also,
What Sean is saying, though, I think would take care of that. If we just said every school is gonna have an auditorium, it's designed and built as an auditorium, then we don't have to get into this, what is it called versus how is it used?
Well, I just mean in the future, if we are gonna repurpose something, we need to have a definition for what repurposing means. We can't just change the name, because in that case, that's really all we did was change the name.
Right.
And I agree with the definition, because right now, what's at Savannah High? Is that a stadium or an athletic complex or a playing field with bleachers?
Yes,
And what do we want to call it?
It's called a complex.
We don't call it a stadium.
We don't call it a stadium?
I think it's called a complex.
They're athletic complexes.
Yeah, that's.
athletic complex.
So, and what was the reason, Brian?
Because of the funding, it comes from East
Okay.
Boston funding.
All right.
It has to be
That's right.
designated as
The
that.
estate.
So can I just ask if I've captured this correctly? And
See?
I hear the conversation, but
Technicality.
you said some of this information is in the design guidelines, but I want
It's
to
a
hear
multi-positional
you're saying that there
discussion.
needs to be a policy that talks about the base functions. The base functions need to be met before any add-ons Do you know what it sounds like y'all still don't know exactly what the base are, so that's.
We have them, they're in our design guidelines.
Yeah, okay. So you have them, we need to pull them from the design guidelines, and then, now I'm hearing you say we should also define those. Is it
So-
defined in the guidelines?
Yes.
For new construction, right?
Well, but also those are the guidelines for renovations too.
Okay.
But I think,
Go ahead.
I think what we could do is adopt a policy that says, here's the here are the board policy values on base facility functions in every school,
Period.
and then the regulations are, we're gonna adopt design guidelines, and we have design guidelines, but they're constantly being updated on the operational side to meet current construction trends and needs, et cetera. So we're setting the policy, which is we want every school to have an auditorium, a gym, music room, art room, whatever, and we can better define what those are if necessary.
I'm surprised that we're creating a new policy. Now, I would be supportive of it, but that is very purely an operational area that I would leave to the district team, the superintendent, to come and say, this is what we're going to do. A board policy is more restrictive.
I want every school to have art. I don't think that's.
I'm not saying I'm not saying that I am opposed to what a policy could accomplish. I'm just making sure everybody knows that you're creating a policy and it is a constriction. And you could very easily do something that puts you out of your own policy. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with all new construction fulfilling a policy, but we've talked a lot about policies to do this, and that, and they are restrictive. They are above the superintendent's level. They are at our level. Do we want to make a policy on everything? Particularly things that are operationalized. Now, if the superintendent wants to, then I am supportive of that. But I'm just pointing that out. Policy is our area. Operations and regulations is the superintendent's area.
If you put it in as it has to be this base level, some of our sites and some of our budgets are going to just say, boom, you don't get a new school then, because we don't have the budget, or it is the entirety of the budget, or we can't build there because there isn't enough space.
Right.
And that's why I said at the beginning, subject to space.
Yes, that's why it's
and
gotta
budget.
have
Yeah.
flexibility to it. But I like how it is now, where we start the conversation. I think this was before I was on the board. These were created. This is where we start. This is what's on the table to start with, and then there's the academics comes in, and Dr. Lewis is like, I want to add 22 CTAE labs to every school, and you got to back her off, right? Yeah. And athletics is like, I want every field, and you got to figure out what's going to fit. Versus if you've got 75 acres, then it's easy to, and there's nothing there. It's easy, and you got the budget. You can go, boom. We can start at the base, and now we can get even bigger.
That's
There's
what
got to be some the comma flexibility has got to be.
I agree there's flexibility, but look at the buildings we built over the last 5 years. There is some consistency and there's some inconsistency. And board wasn't making decisions on whether certain things get built or to a certain scope that are similar to other schools. Somebody's making those decisions, the board wasn't. And, how did we end up with, Beach is a good example. There were discussions early on about providing baseball and softball facilities for that school before construction started, and then we didn't. And then we came back and said, well, wait a minute, what's fair for them is we need to add those facilities in. But if we had a base set of standards that said, space permitting, here's what every high school gets, middle school, elementary school, and then if there are going to be exceptions, there's a process for working through those exceptions. It's not ad hoc. It's not, oh, I didn't know we weren't doing that at that school. We know how decisions are getting made. We know who's making the decisions. That's all I'm asking for. So we can build flexibility into the policy. But we did that with the design guidelines. We put in standards, but then if you go read our standards, compare them to what we've been built, I'm like, I want some clarity, and so we're all following the same checklist. I'm moving into green right now. But then we're all on the same page. And to Dion's point, defining, What's a theater, what's an auditorium?
Right.
I mean, stuff like that, we have to have common language on.
Right.
You were gonna
Well,
say
I
some
just
of these,
wanted
I'm
to go
sorry.
back to, sorry, I'm gonna take to one of the conversation about form and function, and we had a comment about there in our statement about academic performance, and we wrote, academic data, but I think it's really important that we also, and when I was doing my little homework last night about the student, our ideal student, part of mine was somebody who understands how to work with others and resolve conflict and things like that. Well, that happens in spaces that foster collaboration.
Correct.
Right? So it doesn't really happen in a classroom with 24 desks and everybody's doing their own thing. We have beautiful collaborative spaces in some of our schools, but not in all of our schools. Now, some of that's because some are new and some are old. But I think that's the other part that is hard to put into words, I think, when we're talking about the academics and how does the innovation get reflected
In
in
the
the
design.
building and the design.
We're just down here listening and we're just throwing this out. What if the policy was more that we would be building buildings in alignment with the design guidelines, but but it also takes into account the guiding principles which captures that? Because we do, like you were saying, have those base design guidelines, but the policy says that that's what we have to do and take into consideration the guiding principles.
I thought that's what you were that you were articulating. So that a principal doesn't get to come in, or somebody else gets to come in and say, we're not gonna put a gym here because I'd rather have a drone center. I'm just giving an example, right? Or I'd rather have this. No. Kids today and tomorrow and forever need a gym because physical activity is important. So you don't get to come in and make a last minute, I want to make this decision at the expense of something that meets the baseline.
And frankly, a board member for a district shouldn't get to say, hey, there's this, I really want this, because that's what I'm hearing from my community. This is a board asset, a community asset, not a district asset.
I'm trying to get a drawbridge.
Of course you did.
So the intent of the policy, I think, is what we were trying to define, because we were hearing some concerns about it being restrictive, and then you get into ministerial duty violations and things if it's too specific. But the overarching component of that is, which the board has done before, is authorizing the superintendent to have and develop a set of guidelines. We have design guidelines, but the policy, if I hear correct, would enforce it to be reviewed annually and used, or to the account of market conditions, et cetera, et cetera.
And let me be clear, like in my mind, a policy is, we as a board believe every high school should meet the requirements from GHSA on classroom size, whatever, but should offer art, music, athletics. And the design, and taking them a little further, the guidelines actually say,
Reflect that.
well, here are the specific components from GHSA. That's what the guidelines say. But what do we all want? There are many districts that don't offer art and music. Do we as a board want that? Do we want at least an auditorium in every high school? Do we want that in every middle school? We should decide that as a board, and then how that gets operationalized and built and managed is superintendent and staff.
So I love the idea of this, to take our superintendent's term, this aspirational thinking. I want you to take that policy and apply it to the district as it lives right now. So when we do this policy, which I'm in support of, I did not want a policy that one day we would be at a meeting having to vote to suspend the rules because we'd have to build something that couldn't go with the policy.
Right.
That's the vote I never want us to have to take.
Right.
To vote that, oh, this project doesn't get what it needs because we can't comply with the policy. So if the policy has plasticity, that is awesome. But here's the thing, we have this policy, what are we gonna do when we drive around the district and we see that middle school M has no pitcher's mound, no bases on the athletic field, even though our policy says it's supposed to have that?
Yeah.
What are we going to do when we go to all of these facilities that don't currently meet the standard? And we have a standard for new construction that we are not aligned with the old construction. Like we had our New Hampstead parent, talking about our field. Now, I'm not saying don't make a policy so we don't have to notice that, But when we make I'm not saying don't make a policy so we don't have to notice that, period. I am saying we should prepare for what it means to live to this standard for everybody every day, starting right now. A child ought to be able to go outside and play a sport at Myers, and they can.
And we had that discussion when we did the design guidelines update 7 or 8 years ago. And so then they built in, here's what happens when we renovate. And then we also built in, the district built in, we're gonna go back and look at our existing facilities and retrofit where we can.
Because those now should become the priority before doing anything else new. Should we bring our existing schools up to standard?
Except under East Blast,
Right.
we have to go to the community and say, here are the projects we're gonna do. And we are bound by that referendum. So when we say we're gonna build a new Windsor Forest,
You can only build.
we need to go build a new Windsor Forest. We have to use East Blast money for that.
But as we introduce a new E-Splosh, would it not be compelling to the community to say we're gonna use some of that money to bring some of these other things?
And if you
up to
look at East Blast
standard
4 now, we've got 2 new schools. The rest are renovations and
We
retrofits.
do that, it's just in the 5 years that it takes to get there.
Yeah.
West side blows up and you're like, oh dang, we
Right,
don't have some done.
but
I would be,
Dion's point is
I would be
100%,
mad
yeah.
if you built something new and mine was left.
Right.
Right.
So that also feeds into the guiding principle that our group had discussion on, which was positioning yourself for finances to be able to be nimble in that area.
So I think that, to wrap up, that like, there's a difference between building new and renovation, which I think is part of what Dion is getting to. I think we have to be very cognizant and recognize that. So you take the athletic facilities at every high school, we would have Savannah Arts Academy. They will never have an athletics complex, but they have Daffin Park, which they utilize for a lot of their, so I think that's an astute point that we have to be cognizant of that. But getting kind of up to that higher level, I think, especially for our renovations, how do our guiding principles inform the decisions we're making if we're having to make choice, like if we've set this standard for our new schools and we're renovating a school and we have to make choices about, do they get an auditorium or do they get a gym? You know, because of site constraints, like do our guiding principles help to inform, or do we close that school and look to build it somewhere new? So
If what I heard Sean say correctly, he said, given space and budget.
Yeah.
But I want budget to be last. I want programming and space to be first.
Right, so if that's the policy, then it takes into account what you're saying already.
It does. And I think I also heard him say having something in there about what is that process for making that decision, which I think is the really important part, and that's what gives it transparency. So I just wanted
Dr. Weiss, Chief Enoch isn't here, but I understand that campus police has come to you with the thought that all of our schools need to be fenced. And we brought this up at the last board meeting, and Sean did give me a good idea to say, because what we see now is that it looks like campus police has just decided, okay, we're going to put a fence up, so we have some horrible fencing, chain link that have made our schools look pretty.
I've heard you say that.
So Sean's suggestion was we put it in the design.
Yeah.
That if you agree with Chief Enoch that all of our schools, if all of us agree that all of our schools need to be fenced, then we're going to put into the design the budget and the thing for it. Now, how do we address schools that are not, the old schools that we have that need to be, that can't go into the design? I guess we can word that so that the fencing that we decide in the design for the newer schools will also be in place for the older ones.
Well, that's a design guideline detail that I think is important when you.
But it's important.
It goes in the design principles.
But I think the bigger picture guiding principle.
No, not in the guiding principles,
No,
the
I know,
design
that's the
principles.
design guidelines,
Yes.
but she brings up something that is not reflected in our guiding principles, but to me, I think it's really important to maintain a balance of,
Innovation and safety.
yeah, that, I don't know how to, some of our schools, which I think is to benefit, use public spaces for their students. And I hope that's not something that we ever get away from in the name of security. Like the students from Charles Ellis walk to Daphne Park for field day, and it's adorable. And I hope we don't ever get away from things like, and that's more of an operational, I think the safety thing is kind of triggered.
Yeah, but
Now I'm rambling, never mind.
still at Charles Ellis, so they still have the nice fencing around it, and they have. you know,
Yeah, but that wasn't my point. My point was the balance of safety and creating and inviting space.
I mean, the guideline is maximize safety and security. At one location, maybe we don't need a fence everywhere because the building is 3 feet tall and there's an outside wall. You know, the outside brick is right there, but maybe we do need fencing other places. So there has to be some discretion about what type of
Safety.
what type of safety. What does that mean?
And
Right?
Can I interject here? Because what I hear, I mean, I think this is really important, and I hear this needs to be added. This is a big discussion, and it sounds like you all agree we need to explore this further. My question for you all is, do you want to continue doing that here now? Or is there agreement that this discussion needs to result in an action, and now we go vote?
They come with the policy. The policy refers to the design principles. We create the design principles,
What
right?
I don't
As a
wanna
part of
see-
the regulation.
So
any more new fencing going up that doesn't have our direction. The fencing that went up at Myers, we didn't know anything about until we saw it up. I don't know, Dr. Patrick Brown, maybe you.
No,
you
I
saw it?
I was not aware.
Okay.
But to address your question and the comment and maybe move us to an early dismissal,
That's good.
historically, even when we have talked about the development of a policy, we have looked to the superintendent for a recommendation for what that would look like. And you may choose to work collaboratively with the chair of CIC or interested board member that's most interested to pin that and then share it. So I think that's one way to handle it, and maybe in an informal or CIC, that would be happy to see us evolve this some more. The conversations about the fences, I would like for us to consider what it feels like to be a child at a school that somebody feels like has to fence them in versus not be fenced in. So I think we can consider quality of life as we look at selective enforcement of these guidelines, because they communicate biases and values that we need to be very mindful of. So just.
Okay.
That is, yeah, that's a conversation for another day.
Well, I
But
think.
it's a conversation that needs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
needs our
Absolutely.
direction, and not next week we see fences up because nothing was said.
Well, and that's why it is in the design guidelines that we've talked a lot about.
Well, and so what I was trying to do is get us to maybe the voting of some of
Yes.
these, because I think some of the things that you just talked about with the quality of or the student experience are probably in here. If they aren't, then that's one we need to discuss if that's a group thing. So that's kind of where we were from a process perspective, is you guys shared your thoughts and now everyone's going to go vote, correct?
Let's vote. Yes.
How many votes? Is it 4 votes?
Four.
You get 4 votes.
We have mail-in voting?
I got some names.
You can go put all your dots on one place.
We have late voting. Can't take all.
She opened her purse, she opened her purse. She opened her purse right now.
I know you had some of me in your classroom.
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of views in my classroom.
House, I'm gonna replace your fence.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you all for being here today. Dr. Howard Hall has a comment.
I have a question.
Question.
Yeah, everybody. May I have your attention? I should have probably asked this question during this Kayla Miller presentation. As we're excited about our K-12 facility, and we know that we'll have the capacity to house our students. When I went to the Groves open house, it was standing room only. And I'm hearing a lot of people, in the community saying that it's overcrowded. So my question is, what is the building, what is Mercer, the old Mercer building's capacity, and what is the enrollment in there at this time?
It is overcapacity, and we recognize that. There is a plan that we're working on to relocate some of those students by the end of the month, actually, based on our last program activity plan that I had an opportunity. You want Ms. Ball Oliver?
It was gonna go in next week's board update, but go ahead.
I don't know if you want me to answer.
Go on.
Okay, we're working with
Okay.
that. We have our count, we know what the number of students are. We work with technology as well for those who have actually not arrived. They're absent, they're still in the list. We work through that on a call on Tuesday. To make a long story short, we are addressing it. We're looking at how it's gonna impact transportation as well. Some of those students will be going back to their zone school. Because the majority of those students, some of them are ELL students.
Okay, because there was just discussion about it in some neighborhood meetings that I
Yeah.
attended at Hudson Hill, and they were concerned about it.
Can I ask one quick question? I know SELA was on your list, but didn't we just approve a design for SELA?
For that facility once it's available.
Okay. Okay, I was just
Before
trying
that's
to.
what Dr. Howard Hall was saying, you're saying by the end of September, saying we won't be over capacity at Grove. Is that what you're saying? In another month, we'll have solved that.
In another week and a
So they're
half.
moving, they're moving on September the 5th.
Oh, good.
Those students will report to their new sites on September the 5th, and basically, Groves houses the EL High School for our English language learners. But because of what we did around literacy and to support ESOL programs in the district, we can now put teachers for those specific programs at the home school where those students go, and they can go back to school in their neighborhood schools. So the 50 students that are from Windsor Forest have a teacher now and can return to Windsor Forest and go to school in their community. Where they're from.
That also helps the budget.
So we go back to the community and
Yes.
You'll get a complete update.
That's good. So with all of us here and those complaints now, we can say.
Yeah.
It's being
what's
addressed.
happening. That's-
I may just put it in this week's update. Then y'all have one. Okay.
All right, so let's give a round of applause for some of the pictures around the room. Brittany. And ladies and gentlemen, our facilitator, Sharon Flagger. Well done.
Also, Michelle and Tamika.
Yes.
Amazing in the back. With the
And of course, we continue to thank our Oatland staff as well for the great work they do. I know they're not here, but this is a fantastic place to come, and they always invite us with open arms.
Yeah, it's great.
I was gonna ask, can we get a picture of each drawing Inky did and sent to us like in a PDF or something?
Yeah, Nikki, can you tell them what the final product will be?
Yeah, so I'm gonna make sure that all of the flip charts are photographed, and over the next week, maximum 2 weeks, but in the coming couple of weeks, I'm gonna do a polished, digitally designed summary graphic that boils it down kind of even more. Maybe you can get some nice color copies and print them, tailor to them, circulate them, pick which ones you want to keep internal. If there's any messages that you want to share with the public, they'll be yours to do whatever, and I'll try to get those wrapped up as quickly as I can. And thanks again for having me.
Thank you.
And a special thank you to Kurt and the communications team for helping to put this together. Because they had many iterations.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Our honor. So Cabine's got a lot of work to do because we have to digest all of this stuff, but this has been a fantastic retreat, a lot of great dialogue and a lot of important topics. Subject to final comments from the superintendent. None.
Have a good weekend.
That ends to you, sir, for official.
Go home.
There you go. Thank you all.